I'm 8 years old, but I'm not really. I used to be a college student in my past life. One morning, I just woke up in this new world called the Luolan continent. No truck hit me. No dramatic death. I just went to sleep after playing games with my roommates and opened my eyes here. 2 months ago, I had a bad fever that lasted 3 days, and that's when my old memories came back. I spent days trying to call out for a system like in all those novels I used to read, but nothing ever showed up. My parents even thought the fever had made me stupid. This world has everything you'd expect from a fantasy setting: swords, magic, dragons, elves, beastmen. I was actually excited about the beastier girls and elves, but I haven't seen a single one yet. Right now my life is just standing in the backyard every day, swinging a sword until my arms feel like they're going to fall off. My father, Val Ray, is the one training me. He used to be a commoner and an adventurer. He found a master-level sword technique called the Thunderlight Sword in some ancient ruins. Later he fought in a war alongside a baron named Skoll, saved the guy's life, and got made a knight. He even gave himself the last name, Ray, after his sword style. Now he trains soldiers in the morning and beats me into shape in the afternoon. The way warriors get stronger here is by doing sword moves matched with a special breathing technique that pulls magic energy from the air into something called a battle mark, a pattern carved into your body. The battle mark stores magic and uses it to strengthen you. My father carved the most basic one onto my chest, but after 2 weeks of training, I still can't feel any magic at all. He says that's normal. It took him 3 months, and people called him a genius for that. What I really want is to be a mage. Mages just meditate to strengthen their mind. Then they control elements and form magic patterns to cast spells. That sounds way better than this torture. And here's the thing. If you become even a low-level mage, you're automatically treated as nobility, recognized by every human kingdom. That matters a lot to me, because my father's knight title can't be passed down. If I don't earn my own title, I'll lose even the family name when he dies. Commoners in this country aren't allowed to have last names. So every day I swing that sword, my whole body aching, dreaming about the day I might get to put it down and pick up a staff instead. Becoming a mage is basically a rich person's game. There's a potion called the Awakening Potion that can slowly strengthen a kid's spiritual power, but you can only drink 1 bottle per year, starting from age 8. If you haven't awakened your spiritual C by 14, it's over. You'll never be a mage. And each bottle costs at least 500 gold coins. In our territory, a normal family of 4 lives on 2 gold coins a year. My father earns around 30 gold as a knight. When I learned all this, my mage dream was pretty much dead. There's still a tiny chance of awakening naturally if you're born with strong spiritual power, but I'm not counting on that. So even though I complain about sword training every day, I haven't actually given up. It's the only path I have. After dinner, my mother told me to work hard and reach master-level warrior so I can be knighted and become a noble. She's actually from a noble family herself, the youngest daughter of Baron Ethan. He and my father became close friends during the war, which is how my parents ended up together. Then my father told me some news. The Viscount had hired a tutor for his children, and I'd be joining their lessons. He wanted me to build a good relationship with them from the start. The next morning, he took me to a room in the Viscount's mansion. Inside were 2 kids my age, a boy and a girl. The boy was Luca Garcia, the Viscount's eldest son, and the girl was Eudora Garcia, his daughter. They're twins. Luca was shorter than me, handsome and confident-looking, dressed in fancy blue clothes with white patterns and gold trim. Eudora wore a matching long dress with a big bow at the waist. She had wavy light gold hair, bright eyes, and skin that seemed to glow in the morning light, like a princess out of a fairy tale. Their tutor, a man named Chris Martin, came in and started teaching right away, numbers and letters, the basics. For me, with a whole past life of education, it was nothing. Eudora paid close attention too. Luca was the one squirming the whole time. The moment class ended, Luca ran over to me, excited to talk about my father. He'd heard my dad was the strongest warrior in the territory, that he'd cut down 2 warriors of the same level while surrounded by enemies. Eudora came over too and said her father told her he would have died if not for my dad. They both praised his Thunderlight Sword technique like it was legendary. I was polite about it. I told them my father said it was only possible because the enemies were focused on the Viscount and because the Viscount himself helped. Honestly, my dad brags about that fight all the time at home, but I figured being humble was smarter in front of these two. What I didn't realize was how impressive Master Level actually is. There are only two Master Level warriors in the entire territory, my father and the Viscount. And even in the capital of our small kingdom, that rank isn't something people ignore. Luca wanted to skip afternoon training and go to the market with me. Apparently, a bunch of adventurers had come to hunt something called a White Moon Magic Bear, a level 5 magical beast, and there were even mages among them. But Eudora reminded him that their father would check on his training, and if he wasn't there, his backside would pay for it. Luca deflated instantly, slumping onto the desk like his soul had left his body. I felt his pain. I had sword practice waiting for me too. Then Luca groaned, "Father is so unfair. Why won't he buy me an awakening potion? I want to be a mage too. At least I wasn't the only one." Eudora explained that the Viscount couldn't afford 2 bottles of awakening potion a year, one for her and one for Luca. Since Luca would inherit the title no matter what, their father chose to invest in Eudora's chance at becoming a mage. That way, even as a girl who can inherit, she'd at least be recognized as honorary nobility. I felt envious, but looking at Eudora, she didn't seem all that happy about it. When she said, "I hope I can awaken someday," there was no excitement in her voice. For a kid our age, she seemed way too mature. On the carriage ride home, my father asked how I got along with them. I told him they were nothing like the spoiled, noble children I'd imagined. No arrogance, no temper. They were easy to talk to. He seemed pleased. He clearly trusted the Viscount a lot, and honestly, a man willing to spend thousands of gold coins on his daughter's slim chance at a future couldn't be a bad person. Then the afternoon torture started again. Swing the sword, over and over, until I collapsed on the ground. I stared at the sunset and figured Luca was probably lying on the ground somewhere too, half dead, just like me. That became my routine: study in the morning, train in the afternoon. Months passed, half a year since I'd crossed over into this world. Then one snowy day, 5 months into my training, it happened. I was swinging my sword under a bare tree when I felt a warmth in my chest. Something was gathering toward my battle mark. My eyes filled with tears. I had finally sensed magic. My exhausted body suddenly felt full of energy. My father told me not to stop, to keep feeling the magic carefully. I could tell he was in a great mood. He thought to himself that sensing magic at my age in just 5 months meant my talent wasn't bad, almost as good as his. I finished a full set of sword moves and felt the magic circulate through my battle mark, then slowly seep into the rest of my body, strengthening it bit by bit. When I stopped, the magic drained away almost instantly, and the exhaustion hit me all at once. That tiny bit of magic was like a single drop of water in a bowl. My father had me try directing the magic into my arm. The moment I did, my arm surged with power. I swung the sword and could clearly feel the difference: faster, stronger. I asked him why practicing sword techniques absorbed magic so much faster than just breathing. He said it was obvious. When I swing a sword, my entire body is pulling in magic. When I'm just standing around breathing, only my lungs are doing the work. It made perfect sense. All those novels from my past life where people got stronger just by sitting and meditating, total nonsense. Sitting around doing nothing only makes you weaker. He told me I was now a beginner-level warrior. To reach mid-level, I need to fill my battle mark completely and strengthen my entire body until it stopped absorbing magic on its own. Then he'd add a second ring to my battle mark, and I'd advance. Time kept passing. Luca became a beginner warrior about 2 weeks after me, and after that we sparred together regularly. We got to know each other's moves so well that our fights always ended in a draw. He'd block my tricks, I'd see through his. One day while Eudora brought us snacks during a break, I asked her how the latest awakening potion went. She said nothing happened, 4 bottles down, already 12 years old, and still no sign of awakening. She only had 2 years left. She never had any confidence when this topic came up. I told her not to worry, that she still had time and should believe in herself. But even I wasn't sure those words meant much. Magic in this world is strange. When you can't sense it, it might as well not exist. You can't extract it from the air, can't see it, can't prove it's there. But the moment you can sense it, it's completely real. During training, I can feel my whole body pulling it in from somewhere, and the instant it enters my body, I can control it and use it. I asked Eudora how mages train. She said that after awakening, a spiritual vortex forms between your eyebrows and slowly absorbs magic on its own. Meditation strengthens your spiritual power. She didn't know much beyond that. Elements are a lot more straightforward than raw magic. Water, fire, wind, lightning, ice, rock, wood, life, light, dark. They can be made visible and used directly. The most common example is the magic cores inside magical beasts, which are basically crystals of elemental energy. Powerful mages can even use soul magic, mind magic, time magic, or space magic. Luca asked me how long until I reach mid-level warrior. I told him it should be soon and that he'd better keep up. He insisted it could go either way. When I got home, I found my mother lying on the sofa, tired from a day of shopping with the Viscountess. Our maid Celeste, who's been with my mother since before she married, had gone to cook dinner. So I offered to massage her legs. Here's the thing. In my past life, I was studying traditional Chinese medicine in college. Acupuncture and massage, specifically. I studied for 2 years before I ended up here, so I knew the pressure points well. I worked on her Shuahai, Zisanli, Sanyinjiao, and Yongquan points. She said it felt even better than when Celeste did it. Then she asked what Yongquan point meant. I explained it was a pressure point on the sole of the foot. She asked what a pressure point was. She'd never heard of such a thing. I panicked. This world didn't know about acupuncture points at all. I quickly lied and said the tutor at the Viscount's mansion taught us. She was skeptical since her own childhood tutor never mentioned anything like it. I was saved by Celeste calling us to dinner. Later that night, lying in bed, I thought about it more carefully. It made sense that this world hadn't discovered pressure points. Even back on Earth, only Eastern medicine recognized them. Western countries only learned about them recently, and plenty of Western doctors still don't believe they exist. You can't see them, no instrument can detect them, and if you cut the flesh open at that spot, it looks the same as everywhere else. Kind of like magic in this world, invisible but real. Then something hit me. I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. In all those cultivation novels from my past life, practitioners stored energy in their dantian, 3 points on the body. The upper dantian is between the eyebrows, the middle is at the chest, and the lower is below the navel. Martial artists always talked about sinking qi into the lower dantian, also called the qi-si. I pressed my Sanyinjiao point, felt a distinct soreness. Pressed Zisanli, same thing. Pressed a random spot that wasn't a pressure point, nothing. So the human body in this world has the same acupuncture points as in my old one. Back on Earth, there was no real qi or spiritual energy, that was all fiction. But internal martial arts like Tai Chi were real. My great-grandfather practiced it and was still healthy and sharp at over 90. It couldn't make you fly or split mountains, but it genuinely kept people healthy. There was no qi on Earth. But this world has magic. What if I could store magic in my dantian? What if I could channel it through meridians the way those novels described? Sleep was impossible now. I was sitting up in bed, heart pounding with excitement. If magic could work like spiritual energy from those stories, could I achieve something like immortal cultivation? A golden core? Maybe even eternal life? The moment I had that idea about storing magic in my dantian, I tried it right away. I controlled the magic inside me and pushed it toward the Guanyuan point, the lower dantian. Nothing happened. No matter how hard I tried, the magic couldn't find the acupuncture point. It was like there was a hidden door perfectly disguised as a wall. I could feel the soreness when I pressed the spot with my finger, but magic just passed right through like there was nothing special there at all. I fell back onto the bed, disappointed. Maybe those novels really were all lies. But then, a knock at the door. It was Celeste. My mother had sent her to learn my massage technique and those pressure points I'd mentioned. While I was teaching her, something clicked in my head. I couldn't get into the dantian from outside, so what if I opened the door from the inside? For that, I'd need internal energy already inside the dantian. And for that, I needed to practice internal martial arts. Lucky for me, I'd spent 2 years learning Tai Chi from my great-grandfather back in middle school. After Celeste left, I went straight to the backyard. I started going through the Tai Chi forms, slowly at first, pulling the movements from memory. With my past life's foundation, 4 years of sword training, and a body strengthened by magic, it came back smoother than I expected. I practiced deep into the night. The next day, I couldn't wait to get home after class. My father didn't watch my afternoon training anymore, which was perfect. No way I could explain Tai Chi to him. I switched to abdominal breathing, the so-called Dantian breathing method, and practiced Tai Chi with it all afternoon. By evening, I felt something. A trickle of magic entered my body following my breath and slowly gathered in. My battle mark. Not my Dantian. My battle mark. I stood there frozen. You've got to be kidding me. I tried again carefully and noticed a subtle difference. During sword practice, magic actively rushes toward the battle mark. During Tai Chi, it felt like the battle mark was sucking the magic in, like a vortex pulling everything toward itself. The battle mark had its own gravity, always drawing in magic, even when I wasn't training. So that was the problem. Even if I could guide magic toward my Dantian, the battle mark would just intercept it. I needed to shut the battle mark down first. At dinner, I casually asked my father if there was any way to stop a battle mark from running. He gave me a confused look. I told him I was just curious. He said normally you can't. Once activated, it runs forever unless destroyed. But then he mentioned there was one exception, breaking through to legendary rank. Legendary battle marks work completely differently. They let your body connect directly with the elements of heaven and earth, using your internal elements to resonate with external ones, like a lever amplifying your power. That's why legendary warriors are in a completely different league from masters. The key detail: when carving a legendary battle mark, there can't be even a trace of magic inside the old mark. Any leftover magic could accidentally trigger elemental resonance and ruin the whole process. So I asked again, how do you actually stop it? He said it was simple. Empty all the magic from the battle mark. Keep just a tiny bit at the surface to separate the mark from your body so it can't absorb anything, and wait. Without magic flowing through it, the mark stops on its own. After the new mark is carved, you just train for a bit to reactivate it. Not months like the first time, just a few rounds of practice. Simple. That was all I needed to hear. I had a plan now. That night, I successfully shut down my battle mark. After making sure my father was asleep, I snuck out to the backyard and started practicing Tai Chi. At first, nothing happened. No magic flowed in at all. I figured the battle mark must have been helping me sense magic, and without it running, my sensitivity dropped. But I kept going, round after round, through the entire night. Just as the sky started to lighten, I finally felt it, tiny wisps of magic, following my breath, slowly gathering in my Dantian. I cried, actual tears running down my face. The novels weren't all lies after all. The Dantian really could store energy like magic. I snuck back to my room before my parents woke up. Even after an all-night session, I was too excited to feel tired. During morning practice with my father, I kept the magic blocking my battle mark and just went through the motions to keep up appearances. After class, I rushed home so fast I didn't even say goodbye to Luca. Eudora joked that I was probably racing to break through to mid-level so I could bully her brother. That lit a fire under Luca too. I kept this up for a whole month, training Tai Chi in secret every night. I learned a lot during that time. Magic from the Dantian works completely differently from battle mark magic. The battle mark system uses magic to strengthen your body and boost physical attacks. Magic is just fuel. But Dantian magic flows through the meridians and can be applied directly to attack and defense. I couldn't shoot it out at range yet, but I could send it through contact to damage things. Small things. Anyway, I could crack a pebble. The Dantian gathered magic much more slowly than the battle mark, so my reserves were tiny. Today I'd planned to go home and finally reactivate my battle mark, but Luca grabbed me after class and refused to let go. We hadn't sparred in a month, and he was fed up with my excuses. Eudora had even arranged for the kitchen to make my favorite food. I couldn't say no. After lunch, we faced off in the Viscount's training room with wooden swords. The problem was obvious right away. My battle mark was empty. I had no magic reinforcing my body. Luca came at me hard, and I could barely hold on. He noticed immediately and started taunting me about getting weaker. A few exchanges later, he knocked the sword out of my hand with a powerful swing. I stumbled back, wide open. He charged in with a thrust aimed right at me. I barely twisted aside. Then my body moved on instinct, a deep breath, sinking my chi to the Dantian, dropping into a horse stance. My left hand shot out and caught his sword wrist. I stepped back, using his own forward momentum against him. His feet left the ground. I grabbed his collar with my right hand and threw him over my shoulder. He slammed into the floor with a loud crash. Eudora burst out laughing, teasing him about almost winning only to get flipped at the last second. I was stunned too. I just used Tai Chi in a real fight without even thinking about it. Redirect force, use softness against strength, turn the opponent's power back on them. With no magic in my battle mark, Tai Chi was actually the perfect style for me right now. I didn't pick up my sword. I dropped into a stance, hands open in front of me, and said, "Come on. Let me show you the martial art I've been practicing." Lucas stared at me like I was crazy. "You're serious?" "No sword?" "Dead serious." "Come on." Luca charged at me again. I stayed calm, dodged with the smallest movement I could, caught his wrist, redirected his force with a Tai Chi spiral, and threw him to the ground a second time. He had no idea what to make of it. In this world, fighting is all about raw power, big swings, brute force. Nobody here has ever seen a style built around softness overcoming hardness. I struck a classic Tai Chi pose and said the name. Eudora stood up clapping and said it looked cool. But then Luca got serious. He came at me full power, and this time everything felt wrong. Too fast, too strong. I couldn't redirect it. I hit the floor. He'd broken through to mid-level. That's why he'd been so insistent on sparring today. He wanted to surprise me. A mid-level warrior can use almost twice the attack power of a peak beginner. Tai Chi can handle a strength gap, but not that big of one. I told him I was done and headed home to train. Eudora warned Luca not to get cocky. She said once I reached mid-level 2, my Tai Chi would make me very hard to beat. Back home, I started reactivating my battle mark with the Thunderlight sword technique. Partway through, I realized I'd been using abdominal breathing, the Dantian method, instead of the normal breathing technique. I decided to just go with it. As magic flowed in, most of it went to the battle mark, but a small portion trickled into my Dantian as well. I didn't mind. Over a few days, I filled my battle mark completely, saving all the magic without spending any on body strengthening. Then came the night I'd been preparing for. I sat cross-legged on my bed and began the attempt to connect my battle mark and my Dantian. I pushed battle mark magic toward the Dantian from outside, while moving Dantian magic along the inner walls, searching for a connection point. The Dantian felt like a pond. Magic was the water, meridians were the pipes. I searched the walls, the bottom, circled twice, nothing. Then I tried the top. There it was, one spot that felt different from the rest. I pushed all my Dantian magic against that spot from inside. Outside, the battle mark magic pressed inward at the same point. I was nervous. What if I damaged myself? But nothing hurt, and I figured the worst case was just going back to normal battle mark training. Then I felt something like a pop. The door opened. The two streams of magic crashed into each other and began to merge. That's when I noticed something strange. The magic from my Dantian wasn't the same as regular magic. It had something extra mixed in, something subtle I'd never noticed because I'd never had pure magic to compare it with. I immediately separated the two sides and examined the merged magic sitting in the middle. I tested it by using it to strengthen my body. The results shocked me. If regular magic's strengthening effect was 1, the merged magic was 1.5. Pure Dantian magic with its higher concentration of the mystery substance scored only 1.2. Too much of it actually reduced efficiency. After more testing, I found the best ratio, 25% of this unknown substance mixed with 75% pure magic gave exactly double the effect of pure magic alone. It was like a catalyst. It didn't replace magic, but amplified what magic could do. And once mixed, it couldn't be separated back out, only diluted further with more pure magic. My excitement didn't last long. The Dantian held so little magic compared to the battle mark that once I mixed them together, the catalyst would be diluted to almost nothing. I needed to figure out where the catalyst came from. I tested it. I moved some pure magic from the battle mark into the Dantian, then practiced Tai Chi. Sure enough, the catalyst appeared in that magic afterward. So the catalyst was what internal martial artists in my old world called inner force, or Qi. It's an energy the body generates when practicing internal martial arts. That's why those old Tai Chi masters back on Earth could stay healthy into their 90s and punch harder than bodybuilders twice their size. I ran the numbers. 1 hour of Tai Chi produced about 10 units of catalyzed magic, 5 inner force. 1 hour of sword practice with abdominal breathing produced 50 units total, but only zero point 0.5 inner force. Regular sword practice with normal breathing? 50 magic, 0 inner force. The raw energy output of this world's training was 5 times higher than Tai Chi. No wonder warriors here were so much stronger than anything on earth. But inner force had one huge advantage: it could leave the body. Pure magic couldn't. When the ratio was at least 1 part inner force to 3 parts magic, the mixed energy could be pushed out through contact. The damage was based entirely on the inner force amount, though extra magic didn't make it hit harder outside the body. I named the optimal 1:3 mix spiritual energy, borrowing from cultivation novels. The problem was that inner force generated so slowly that 5 hours of Tai Chi barely matched 1 hour of sword practice. Not practical at all, for now. Still, the month wasn't wasted. I had a Dantian that could store extra magic, giving me way more endurance than anyone else. And I discovered something big. Magic and spiritual energy could be used to open meridians. Magic could replace inner force for that purpose. The higher quality the energy, the better it worked, so spiritual energy was ideal. I decided not to break through to mid-level right away, even though my body was ready. Instead, I spent over 3 months filling both my battle mark and Dantian completely with spiritual energy. Luca mocked me every day for being stuck at beginner level. Even my father suspected I was slacking and watched me train for several days. Then one night, I sat cross-legged on my bed and began. The Ren meridian along the front of the body was already open. That happened naturally when magic first entered my Dantian. So I guided spiritual energy down to the Huin point at the base, then pushed into the Du meridian along the spine. The moment I left the Huin point, everything was blocked. In my old world, people are born with both meridians connected, but they close after birth and get harder to reopen with age. By adulthood, the Du meridian seals completely. It would take decades of training to open. I was only 12, so it was relatively easier. Relatively. I shaped my spiritual energy into a spear tip and forced it forward along the meridian. The pain was beyond anything I'd ever felt. My whole body shook, drenched in sweat. I could barely focus through the agony. But I gritted my teeth and kept pushing until I reached Changqiang, the first acupuncture point of the Du meridian. I didn't stop there. I was doing this in one shot. This kind of pain, once was enough. If I had to go through this every single night, I'd lose my mind. After the first section of the Du meridian, the rest wasn't as brutal. I pushed through the pain, opening point after point, until I reached Bai Wei at the top of my head. The moment I hit that point, magic poured in from outside, straight through the crown of my skull. It diluted my spiritual energy, but gave me enough to keep going. I continued downward to the Yintang point between my eyebrows, the upper Dantian, also called the spiritual sea. In this world, the instant my energy entered it, my head exploded. Not literally, but it felt like a bomb went off inside my skull. I thought I was dying. Here's what actually happened, though I didn't understand it at the time. Every person has a mass of spiritual power sitting dormant inside the Yintang point. Normally, it's like a boulder, too heavy to move, so you can't use it. It hardens completely around age 14, which is why mages must awaken before then. The awakening potion works by injecting a small dose of pure spiritual power to gently stimulate that mass and make it spread out into usable fragments. What I did was not gentle. I slammed a concentrated ball of magic, far stronger than any potion, straight into it. The spiritual mass didn't spread. It detonated. Spiritual power scattered everywhere through my head, and my consciousness started fading fast. Dizziness hit me in waves. I was on the edge of blacking out, and if the spiritual power stayed scattered, I'd become a vegetable. Panicking, I remembered what Eudora once told me. A mage has a vortex between their eyebrows. So I gathered every scrap of magic I had left and spun it into a whirlpool right there at the Yintang point. It worked. The vortex pulled the scattered spiritual power back in like a magnet. But it didn't stop there. It started sucking in massive amounts of magic through Bai Wei from outside too. The little whirlpool became a raging tornado. All the spiritual power latched onto it, spinning together, and my mind finally cleared. I'd accidentally awakened as a mage. and not the weak potion-awakened kind. My spiritual sea had been blown wide open, bigger than what any potion could achieve. Naturally awakened mages already start with an advantage over potion-awakened ones, and what I'd done was even more extreme than natural awakening. With the magic tornado still drilling forward, I blasted through the remaining meridian points like they were nothing. The spinning energy acted like a drill, carving the path open effortlessly. I punched through the final point, Yinjiao, and connected it to Chengjiang on the Ren meridian. The two meridians linked. A complete circuit, from crown to base and back again. I felt reborn. Now, just sitting still, magic flowed continuously through a loop, down from Baihui through the spiritual sea, down to the Dantian, through the Huin point, up the spine, back to Baihui, picking up fresh magic from outside, then spiraling back down again. Every acupuncture point it passed through generated a tiny bit of inner force, mixing it into the flow automatically. Without me doing anything, this passive cycle produced about the same amount of magic as active sword training. And when I actively controlled the vortex, over 10 times faster than normal training. While just sitting there, I jumped off the bed, grinning like an idiot. All those cultivation novels, they were right. You really could get stronger just by sitting down and meditating. I silently thanked every wuxia and xianxia author I'd ever read, and every person who ever created an internal martial art. They were all geniuses. I thought about why my Yintang point exploded when I'd never heard of that happening to internal martial artists back on Earth. My best guess was that it was because of magic. Pure inner force alone probably wouldn't stimulate the spiritual mass. I turned out to be right about that. When I focused on my spiritual sea, I discovered a whole new way of seeing. Colorful specks of light floated everywhere in the air around me, elements. I could also see inside my own body with perfect clarity, every meridian, every acupuncture point, every muscle and bone. It was like getting a superpower. I remembered a description from my past life about the Upper Dantian being the palace of the spirit, capable of granting inner vision, outer vision, heightened senses, and improved intelligence. Everything matched. I'd accidentally become a mage. But I couldn't cast a single spell. I had no training, no teacher, and no idea how magic worked on that side. I decided to keep it secret for now. With my training speed being over 10 times faster than normal, I could develop both paths at once. I'd reveal the mage side when I turned 14. I had a year and a half, and in that time I could match what would take others 10 or 20 years. I also changed my original plan. Instead of breaking through to mid-level right away, I decided to open all my remaining meridians first. The 8 extraordinary meridians, the 12 standard meridians, all of them. Every acupuncture point the magic passed through generated inner force, and I needed more points active to reach the optimal ratio. With magic constantly pouring in through Baihui and the spiritual sea's vortex acting like a drill, opening meridians was much easier now than the first time. Still incredibly painful, though. My routine became spend the day refilling magic, spend the night forcing open meridians while trying not to scream. Day after day, night after night. Eventually, I got used to the pain. I took back what I said about going crazy. Turns out you can get used to anything. One autumn morning, I stood under a tree watching the leaves fall, feeling the cool air. This summer had been the most important time of my life. It gave me a future with limitless possibilities. My father walked over and smacked me on the head for daydreaming. Luca had reached mid-level 4 months ago, and here I was still a beginner. He asked what gave me such confidence when I told him I was ready to soar. But when I said I'd reached beginner peak, his attitude changed. He took me inside, pulled out a magic ink pen, and carefully drew a second ring around the battle mark on my chest. When he finished, he said I was now a mid-level warrior. He explained that the mid-level battle mark absorbs elements into the body. Once every part of me had been washed by elemental energy, it would unlock my body's hidden potential, and I could strengthen myself with magic again. After that second round of strengthening was complete, I could advance to high level. At high level, I'd absorb a single element to build resistance and affinity. In our case, lightning, since we practiced the Thunderlight sword. Then he tossed me the actual Thunderlight sword manual. The whole thing, including the formulas for the magic ink and instructions for carving future battle marks myself. He told me to memorize it and give it back, never take it outside, and never tell anyone what comes after mid-level. I'd been wondering how to get my hands on the full manual without raising suspicion, and he just threw it at me. Perfect. With my training speed, I'd be advancing fast, and the last thing I wanted was to scare people. Better to stay quiet and level up in secret. A year and a half passed since I broke through to mid-level. Summer was coming again. Today was our last class with Chris. He thanked us for being good students and told us that in 2 months, we'd be heading to Highgar City to attend the Royal Highgar Magic Martial Academy. He hoped we'd remember him when we made something of ourselves. I thanked him sincerely. Luca promised to hire him again for his own future kids. Eudora just said a quiet goodbye. She'd been in a low mood lately, and I wasn't sure why. After Chris left, Luca stretched and celebrated being free. I reminded him that starting tomorrow he'd have morning training too, since there'd be no more classes to fill that time. He'd actually be busier, not freer. But then he dropped some news. The Viscount and my father were both leaving for the capital tomorrow and wouldn't be back for 2 weeks. Half a month of freedom. I announced I was sleeping until noon. Luca called that boring and suggested we go hunting on Echo Mountain instead, have a barbecue, get some combat experience. I pointed out that Echo Mountain had elite-level magical beasts, and without our fathers around, we'd be walking to our deaths. Luca said he'd bring Captain Owen and a squad of guards. Then Eudora jumped in and said she wanted to come too. She'd never been allowed before. She looked at me and said it would be nice to clear her head. I gave in. The next morning, after the Viscount and my father left, I headed to the city gate with my sword. Luca was already there in light armor with Eudora beside him. Captain Owen stood nearby with 12 guards, all armored and armed. Eudora wore casual clothes for easy movement, a wide-brimmed hat, and her golden hair tied in a braid behind her. The look was completely different from her usual noble style, fresh and youthful. I caught myself staring a moment too long. We loaded into the carriage. Instead of sitting inside, I climbed up next to Owen. He told me the Viscount had left him behind to watch over the young master. There was no point bringing him to the capital when the Viscount and my father were already the 2 strongest warriors in the territory. Eudora called out from inside, asking if I wanted to sit with them. I told her the breeze outside was nicer. She opened the door and said there was no room out here. So I grabbed my cushion, flipped up onto the roof, set it down, and reached my hand toward her. "The best seat in the house is ready, my lady. Care to try it?" She smiled and took my hand. Luca scrambled up after us. Owen sighed and slowed the horses. Sitting on the carriage roof with the wind in our faces and the countryside stretching out around us, it really was a great view. Luca admitted I was right. Eudora looked out at the scenery and said quietly, "I wish every day could be this happy." Luca looked at her softly. "It will be. You'll be happy every day, I promise." We reached the mountain base and dismounted. Owen left 1 guard with the horses, assigned for specifically to protect Eudora at all times, and told Luca and me firmly, "We only fight when he says we can." If either of us got hurt, he'd have no way to explain it to our fathers. Owen warned us to take every magical beast seriously. Even level 1 creatures aren't stupid. Luca waved it off, and I told Owen we'd be careful. We hiked up the mountain for a while without seeing anything. Luca got impatient, but Owen explained that the entrance area had been cleared out by adventurers long ago. We rested at a pavilion halfway up, mostly for Eudora's sake, since she was the only non-warrior among us. There was even a sign posted, "Caution, magical beasts ahead." Not long after we passed the pavilion, Owen spotted a level 1 frost deer. He said it had 1 natural spell, Ice Spike, that it could fire 5 times before being limited to charging with its antlers. He sent 3 guards to quietly circle around and block its escape, then gave Luca the go-ahead. Luca charged in before Owen even finished talking. The deer fired an ice spike, thick as a wrist, half a meter long. Luca dodged it easily, but the deer was smart. Seeing how fast he was, it immediately turned to run. Luca almost caught up, but the deer slammed on the brakes and kicked backward with both legs. Luca barely got his sword up in time to block. The kick sent him stumbling back, and while he was still off balance, the deer spun around and fired its remaining 4 ice spikes in rapid succession. He blocked the first, dodged the second, deflected the third, but the fourth caught him square in the left shoulder. His armor held, but cold started creeping into his body. Then the deer lowered its antlers and charged. Luca planted his feet, met it head-on, and the collision nearly pushed him back. He gritted his teeth, forced the deer's head aside with a shout, and drove his sword into its neck. Blood sprayed out, and the deer collapsed, twitching. Luca kicked it and declared it was lunch. Eudora asked about his shoulder. He said it was fine. Owen gave him a serious talk about not underestimating opponents. Even a level 1 beast that had survived in the wild had more combat experience than Luca realized. One mistake could have meant real injury. Luca admitted he'd been careless. I patted his shoulder and told him to push out the cold with magic, and reminded him that even a lion uses full strength to catch a rabbit. Owen's men carried the deer, and we headed to a small lake nearby. Owen roasted the venison, and it was incredible, crispy outside, tender inside, the meat's natural flavor shining through even without much seasoning. Even Eudora ate a lot. While waiting for the food, we sat by the lake enjoying the breeze. Luca told Eudora that the Echo Valley was just past the next ridge. You could hear your own voice bounce back if you shouted. She seemed interested. I explained that echoes happen when sound waves hit a large cliff face and reflect back. She wasn't quite sure how sound could bounce, but I told her she'd understand once she tried it herself. After lunch, we pushed deeper into the mountain. Owen let us fight some of the weaker beasts we came across for practice. The toughest fight was a level 2 brown rock boar, a nasty creature with skin as hard as stone, sharp tusks, and the ability to summon earth spikes and rock shields. Luca and I fought it together, but our mid-level strength could barely scratch it. Every hit just left shallow wounds while we had to constantly dodge its tusks and spikes. Owen shouted advice from the sideline. Attack the belly when it rears up to use its earth spikes. I watched for patterns instead of hacking blindly like Luca. When the boar knocked Luca flying with its tusks, I went for its eye from the side. Its rock shield blocked me, but I pushed harder than it expected, and the shield cracked apart. My sword went straight into its right eye. It thrashed wildly. I backed off to avoid the tusks, which put me too far away when it reared up to spike Luca. But Luca rolled clear and charged back in. The boar opened its mouth to summon another rock shield. I'd noticed that tell earlier, and I sprinted in from its blind right side and stabbed straight into its open mouth, interrupting the spell. Luca landed a deep cut on its neck. The boar collapsed. I dug out its magic core, a beautiful golden crystal, smooth and round, glowing like a gemstone in the sunlight. Owen said brown rock boar cores were extremely valuable because of their beauty. Jewelry shops in the capital sold stone shield necklaces made from them for 200 gold coins, and the raw core alone was worth over 100. These boars had been hunted nearly to extinction. Eudora held the core up to the light, smiling, probably the happiest I'd seen her in weeks. Then a streak of purple shot out from nowhere, fast as lightning, snatched the core right out of her hand, and landed on a nearby branch. It was a small purple mink-like creature with a long tail. Owen identified it as a lightning mink, a high-level magical beast, incredibly fast. He told us to stay put and took off after it. Lucas stopped when he heard, high level, cursing about his lost gold coins. But I didn't stop. I'd been hiding my real level for a long time, and this seemed worth revealing it. I channeled magic to my legs and shouted, Thunderstep, a combat technique from the Thunder Light sword style that only high-level warriors can use. Purple lightning crackled under my feet, and I shot forward at a speed no mid-level warrior could match. Lucas stood there with his jaw on the floor. He slapped himself to make sure he wasn't dreaming. Aaron, the one high-level warrior among the guards, recognized the technique immediately. He'd seen my father use it. He confirmed I was already a high-level warrior. Eudora was stunned too. She pointed out that I hadn't even been mid-level for 2 years, and Luca had said he still needed at least 2 more. I'd broken through to mid-level later than Luca, yet here I was, already a full tier above him. Luca just stood there, face in his hands. So when he kept saying I was going easy on you, he was actually telling the truth. I activated Thunderstep and shot past Owen. He was shocked. When did you reach high level? I told him it was just a couple days ago. He didn't believe me, saying my father needed a month to learn Thunderstep after reaching high level. I told him maybe I was just smarter and sped ahead. Owen wasn't too worried since the strongest beasts on this mountain were only level 4, and with Thunderstep I could always escape. What he didn't know was that my speed wasn't just from Thunderstep. I was also channeling spiritual energy through the meridians in my legs, passing through every acupuncture point. It made me incredibly light and agile. I could even change direction almost instantly, weaving through the forest like a fish in water. Normal Thunder Step only boosts straight-line speed and makes turning nearly impossible. Even my father could only manage slight adjustments. I caught up to the lightning mink and swung a Thunderlight slash at it. The little creature dodged, but the energy wave cut through several trees behind it, leaving them charred black. I'd expected it to dodge, so I immediately followed up with Thunder Spiderweb. I drove my sword into the ground and sent lightning crackling outward in all directions. It hit the mink and paralyzed it just long enough for the magic core to drop from its paws. I dove for the core, but the mink recovered almost instantly. It was a lightning element beast with high resistance. I faked going for the core, then switched to grabbing the mink itself. It reacted fast, abandoned the core, and whipped its tail forward, sending dozens of lightning snakes at me. No time to dodge. I called out, Thunder Dragon Shield, and a dragon made of lightning coiled around my body, blocking everything. The mink decided the core wasn't worth the fight and disappeared into the deep forest. I picked up the core and headed back. When I got back to the group, Luca bombarded me with questions. How? When? Why didn't I tell him? I kept it vague, said I broke through just 2 days ago and didn't know why it happened so fast. He asked how I learned combat techniques in 2 days. I just said, because I'm a genius. He didn't find that satisfying. I handed the magic core to Eudora. Got it back. Hold on tight this time. She took it, smiled, and congratulated me on reaching high level. We continued on to Echo Valley, where Owen decided we'd camp for the night. With some free time before dinner, we went exploring. Luca told Eudora to stand between the cliff walls and shout. She cupped her hands around her mouth and yelled, I am Eudora. The valley answered back, Eudora, Eudora, Eudora. Then she shouted, I will become a mage, a mage, a mage, a mage. So that was why she'd been down lately. She was running out of time. The Viscount's trip to the capital was probably to buy her final awakening potion. This was her last chance. Luca shouted, I will become a legendary warrior, legendary warrior, legendary warrior, legendary warrior. Watching them both yelling their dreams into the mountains, I couldn't resist. I cupped my hands and shouted, Thunder and rain are coming. Go bring in the laundry. Luca looked at me like I was an idiot for shouting about laundry. Eudora laughed hard though, and Owen pointed out that we were camping here tonight, so maybe I shouldn't jinx the weather. We settled into camp. For tents, a small one in the middle for Eudora, 3 larger ones around it. Owen told Luca and me to share one with him. After dinner around the campfire, Owen set up guard shifts, 3 men per shift, 3 rotations through the night. He warned us to sleep light and stay alert. I asked Eudora if she'd be scared sleeping alone out here. She said with this many people around, she'd be fine. I went into the tent and sat cross-legged on my sleeping bag to meditate. Luca asked why I was sitting like that instead of lying down. I told him I always sleep this way at home. He stared at me curiously for a while, then passed out from exhaustion. Owen noticed the meditation pose too. He looked at me for a long time like he wanted to ask something, but stayed quiet. Deep in the night, a massive roar shattered the silence. Green-striped unicorn tiger. Wake everyone up! I snapped my eyes open and was on my feet instantly. Owen grabbed his sword, and we rushed outside together. The moment I stepped out, a guard's body came flying and crashed into our tent. Before I could process that, a huge white shape lunged at me. I threw a Thunderlight slash on instinct and dodged right, toward Eudora's tent. The creature hadn't expected an attack at that range. It raised its paw and wrapped itself in green light to tank the hit. Then Owen was there, giant rock sword, and a massive stone-clad blade slammed down on it, cracking its green barrier and driving it to the ground. Now I could see it clearly by the firelight. At least 2.5 meters tall at the shoulder, 6 or 7 meters long, with a whip-like tail over 2 meters. White fur with green stripes, and a spiraling green horn nearly 1/2 meter long on its forehead. It was terrifying. Owen tried to follow up, but the tiger rolled away with shocking speed for something that size. It stood back, blood running down its face from Owen's strike, watching us carefully. It was hurt, but not beaten. I felt someone grab my arm tight, Eudora. She was trembling. I told her it would be okay, that Owen and I would protect her. From under the collapsed tent came Luca's muffled voice. What's going on? Why is the tent down? The tiger roared in response, which pretty much answered his question. Then things got worse. Green wings sprouted from the tiger's back, and it shot toward Owen at incredible speed. Owen called out. Rock armor and stone plating covered his entire body as he met the charge head-on. But the tiger's speed with those wings was overwhelming. Owen could only defend. Luca finally crawled out of the wrecked tent. What the? That's a huge tiger. I told Aaron to take the others and fall back, then used Thunder Step to join the fight. I aimed a Thunder Light Slash at the tiger's head and yelled to Owen that I was backing him up. He told me this was a top-tier level, 4 wind element beast, fast, strong, with ranged wind blade attacks and a wind barrier for defense. Almost no weaknesses. He said to stay behind him and support from a distance. Owen's rock armor made him nearly indestructible on defense, so the tiger couldn't take him down. I fired Thunder Light Slashes from behind him whenever I saw an opening, but they were either dodged or canceled out by wind blades. Then the tiger changed tactics. It circled around us and charged straight at Luca and the others. Owen slammed his sword down. Rock wall. A massive stone barrier shot up from the ground right in the tiger's path. It bounced off the wall and landed back facing us, glaring. Then Eudora screamed. Something's coming. I turned to look and saw a flash of purple lightning land on top of a tent. The lightning mink was back, and it was holding an egg. Then came the screaming. Snakes. Lots of snakes. Dozens of them poured in behind the mink, led by a fire serpent over 2 meters long. Aaron identified it as a level 3 beast and said the mink must have stolen their egg and led them straight to us on purpose. Everything froze for a moment. The tiger watching the snakes watching the mink watching us. Nobody moved. Owen quietly told me the plan. If fighting broke out, I'd protect Eudora and watch the mink. He'd handle the tiger. Aaron and the guards would deal with the snakes. Then the mink lunged at Eudora. I pulled her into my arms with my left hand and swung a Thunder Light Slash with my right. The mink dodged easily and hurled the snake egg at us. I cut it in half on reflex, but the fluid splattered all over Eudora and me. That was bad. The lead serpent saw its egg destroyed, and the whole swarm charged. Owen stomped the ground, cascading rock spikes, sending waves of stone needles forward to slow them down. The tiger used the chaos to leap over the spikes toward the group, but Owen threw up another rock wall and intercepted it. The mink kept targeting Eudora specifically. I had to fight it one-handed while holding her with the other. The guards were getting overwhelmed by the snakes. Several got bitten and poisoned. I figured out what was happening. The snakes were tracking the egg fluid on our bodies. So I told everyone to pull back and let the snakes chase me. I'd lead them away with Eudora. I heard Luca shout behind us. Protect my sister. I promise I'll bring her back safe. I ran toward the mountaintop, keeping my speed controlled so the snakes wouldn't lose me, and turned back to attack the others. The mink chased us too, darting in with electric claw strikes, but its attacks were predictable and I blocked every one. Behind us, Aaron joined Owen against the tiger. They fought together much better, same sword style, years of teamwork. Owen could finally go on offense. The tiger realized it was losing the advantage and retreated into the forest. Owen let it go. 4 guards were injured, one badly. He ordered everyone to pack up fast and move before the snakes came back. Once I'd put enough distance between us and the camp, I told Eudora to hold tight and accelerated hard, leaving the snake swarm far behind. But the mink wouldn't give up. It stayed right on us. Eudora asked why it kept following. I told her to take out the magic core. The moment she held it up, the mink started making excited noises. It wanted the core badly. Eudora asked what we should do. I said there was no way I was giving away 100 gold coins. She put the core away, and the mink exploded with lightning and charged at full power, faster than before, faster than me. I couldn't outrun it anymore. Protecting Eudora while defending against its attacks, I took several cuts across my body. This wasn't going to work. I needed to go all out. The next time it lunged, I called out, Thunder Dragon Shield. A dragon of pure lightning coiled around Eudora and me, blocking the mink's attack completely. It landed on a branch nearby and stared at the lightning dragon, the same move that had stopped it cold this afternoon. Eudora stared at the thunder dragon coiled around us and asked what it was. I told her I'd explain later. She pointed out that high-level warriors only get 2 combat techniques. So how did I have 3? I admitted I was actually elite level. Before she could ask more questions, the mink turned and ran. After chasing me all night, now it wanted to flee? I wasn't letting it go. I held Eudora tight and pursued at full speed. After a while, the mink's lightning aura suddenly vanished. It had burned through its burst mode and entered a weakened state, slowing down dramatically. I closed the distance fast. Then a massive white shape exploded from the trees and clamped its jaws around the mink. Blood sprayed everywhere. The unicorn tiger had been waiting. I slammed on the brakes so hard I nearly fell, spun around, and ran the other direction immediately. Eudora gasped and tightened her grip on me. The tiger swallowed the mink like a snack and came after us. Apparently, it wanted more for breakfast. I ran for hours, the whole night, carrying Eudora, no water, no rest. Even with all my meridians open and spiritual energy boosting me, exhaustion was setting in. I cursed that stupid mink. A level 3 lightning beast chasing a level 2 rock core it didn't even need, burning out its own energy and getting itself killed, and dragging me into this mess. Then the ground disappeared ahead of me. A cliff edge. I skidded to a stop right at the brink, nearly going over. The tiger caught up and blocked the only way back. It stood there watching, probably worried its breakfast might fall off the mountain. I set Eudora down. No more running. I have to fight. She looked at me with an intensity I'd never seen before. Just go. Leave me. Don't be stupid. I promised your brother I'd bring you back safe. Then she told me what had been weighing on her. In 2 months, she'd turn 14. If she didn't awaken as a mage, her life would be decided for her, married off to some nobleman she'd never met, bearing children for a man she didn't love, living as a meaningless noble wife until she died. She said she'd rather die here than live that life. I was shocked. She was only 13, but she'd been carrying all of this inside. Before I could respond, the tiger fired wind blades at us, apparently annoyed that its breakfast was having a conversation instead of being terrified. I blocked the attack with Thunderlight Slash and said, "There's still time. You have to believe in yourself. You will become a mage. And right now, I'm going to kill this tiger and give you its magic core as a congratulations gift." I charged. The tiger wrapped itself in its green wind guardian barrier and lunged at me. Good. It was coming for me, not Eudora. I summoned Thunder Dragon Shield and met it head-on. No dodging, no tricks. Pure aggression. I flooded every meridian with spiritual energy, activated all 3 combat techniques at once, and attacked with everything I had. Without Eudora in my arms, I was actually faster than the tiger. I hammered it with Thunderlight Slash after Thunderlight Slash. It couldn't dodge at close range with that massive body and had to tank my hits behind its wind barrier. I couldn't dodge either. Eudora was right behind me, so I let the Thunder Dragon absorb its wind blades while I only dodged its claws and fangs. It was a war of attrition, and the tiger was losing. Owen had wounded it earlier. It had chased me all night with its wind wings active. Its stamina was draining fast. One of its claw strikes connected and knocked me back 2 steps, but I answered with a Thunderlight Slash that shattered its wind guardian completely. My blade carved across its face. The moment was here. I roared. Thunder Dragon Roar. My nearly broken Thunder Dragon blazed with blinding light and launched itself at the tiger's head, detonating on impact. This was my strongest technique. I'd been saving it for exactly this moment. The explosion sent the massive tiger tumbling backward, its face torn open, blood pouring everywhere. I sprinted forward to finish it off, but its horn lit up. Wind hit me from every direction. Countless wind blades materialized all around me, closing in from every angle at once. Wind blades came from every direction at once. I threw myself sideways with Thunder Step and wrapped my body in spiritual energy, swinging my sword to block as many as I could. It wasn't enough. Dozens of blades cut through me. Blood soaked my clothes, what was left of them. But I'd avoided anything fatal. Eudora screamed my name, and that sound redirected the tiger's attention straight to her. It ignored me and lunged at her instead. I forced my broken body up, activated Thunder Step, and body slammed the tiger mid-leap, knocking its massive frame sideways. It crashed to the ground right next to her. I hit the ground too. Then the cliff gave way. The tiger pushed off with its hind legs, and the rock beneath them crumbled. Eudora and the tiger both started falling. I dove and caught her wrist just in time, but then something yanked us both down. The tiger's tail had wrapped around her waist as it fell. We were all falling now. I stayed calm. The tiger was below us. I pulled Eudora against my chest and fired thunderlight slash after thunderlight slash straight down into the tiger's belly. It had nothing left to defend with. All its remaining magic had gone into that final wind blade attack. Every strike carved into its stomach. Just before we hit the ground, I flipped so Eudora was on top of me, channeled every last drop of spiritual energy to protect my body, and slammed down onto the tiger's corpse. Everything went black. I woke up to Eudora shaking me and crying, begging me not to die. I told her I was fine. She threw her arms around me, sobbing with relief. We were both covered in blood, mine and the tiger's. I was cut up everywhere and could barely stand. But we were alive, and the tiger wasn't. I cut out its magic core, which was fused to the horn, so I took the whole thing. Then I forced myself to dig through the tiger's stomach, an experience I'd rather forget, and found a small purple stone inside. The lightning minx core. The tiger had swallowed it whole. I carved a message into a nearby tree, both safe, with an arrow showing our direction. Then we started moving. Blood would attract other beasts. Eudora supported me as we walked along the cliff base. No water, no food, but no monsters either. When she was clearly exhausted, I told her to rest and watch for danger while I meditated. Sitting cross-legged, I circulated spiritual energy through all my meridians. The healing was much better than pure magic or pure inner force. Spiritual energy worked from both inside and outside simultaneously. By midday, I opened my eyes. Most of my wounds had already scabbed over. Eudora rushed to help me up, and when I told her I didn't need support anymore, she looked almost disappointed, then quickly said she was just glad because it meant less work for her. As we walked, she asked how I'd become elite level so suddenly, and what the Thunder Dragon techniques were. She'd watched her father and mine spar many times and had never seen anything like what I'd done. Eudora kept asking questions, so I decided to tell her part of the truth, but only after she swore to keep it secret. She raised 3 fingers and made a terrifyingly serious oath, swearing on her family's name and her own soul. I hadn't expected her to go that far. I told her I'd discovered an alternative training method and combined it with the traditional one, which multiplied my speed several times over. The cross-legged sitting was part of it, meditation that also accelerated healing. The Thunder Dragon was a modified version of the original Thunder Shield technique from the Sword Manual. I told her modifying just that one technique took 2 months, and that I'd actually been elite level for nearly a year. I'd be at peak elite in days. The only reason I wasn't master level already was because I'd been experimenting with combat techniques. She looked at me with hope in her eyes. Can you teach me? I couldn't. I trusted her, but not completely. Not at her age, not with something this dangerous to me. So I told her my method only supplemented traditional training and couldn't break past master level. It just saved a few years. I said she should wait for her final awakening potion first, because becoming a mage was the better path. If that didn't work out, I'd teach her sword techniques then. The moment I mentioned the potion, all the light drained from her face. She said she had no hope at all of awakening. Then she hugged me, suddenly, tightly, pressing her face into my chest. Take me away. Let's leave the territory together. In a few years, after we have children, we can come back. Our families are close enough that my father wouldn't punish you. I froze. When I finally recovered, I gently pushed her back and told her not to joke like that. She looked straight at me. Her eyes were different from before, firm but soft at the same time. I couldn't hold her gaze and turned away. Before I could speak, she reached up, pulled my face toward hers, and kissed me. My brain went blank. I knew I should push her away, but my hands wouldn't obey. After a long moment, she pulled back and said quietly, "Lindley, I think I've fallen in love with you." She told me everything. How when I carried her through the night, she suddenly saw me differently, strong, confident, making her feel completely safe even with a monster chasing us. How when I stood on that cliff and promised to kill the tiger as her congratulations gift, she thought I was the most dazzling person she'd ever seen. How when I was unconscious after the fall, she realized she couldn't live without me. I told her gently that we'd been through too much in one night. What she felt might just be instinctive dependence. We were alone in danger, and I was the only one who could protect her. I asked her to think it over once we were safe. She shook her head. No, I'm completely calm. I know what I feel. Even if this is an illusion, I'll make it real. She held me again and explained what her life would be as a noble daughter. At 16 or 17, she'd be married off to whatever nobleman her father chose. A political alliance. Nobody would ask if she loved the man. They'd tell her it was for her benefit. A comfortable life as a noblewoman. She said she didn't want to live like a caged bird in a gilded cage with a life planned out by others. Her mother had once told her that if she ever met a boy who made her heart race, she had to pursue him herself. Waiting passively only leads to arranged marriages. Her own mother had been a count's daughter who boldly pursued a baron's son at a banquet, and that's why her parents had a genuinely happy marriage. She looked up at me and said it again, "Linley, I love you. Take me away from here. Let's leave together." What Eudora said about noble women was true. Most are married off at 16 or 17, some even younger. Even princesses can't escape it. Nobody cares what the woman thinks. The only way out is to become a mage. Warriors don't help because there's a ceiling to how strong they can get, and that ceiling depends on the level of technique you learn. Breaking past it requires a mage of equal or higher level who specializes in your element, understands magic arrays, and can design new battle marks. That's incredibly rare. Mages, on the other hand, have no upper limit. Nobody knows how far a mage might go. And the Mage Association has a rule. Every mage has the right to refuse any unwanted marriage before age 20. No noble family would easily give away a child who's a mage. Either, mages can create magic scrolls, magic weapons, enchanted equipment, even pilot magic warships. They're far more valuable than warriors. So becoming a mage was truly Eudora's only escape. When she asked me again to take her away, I'd be lying if I said my heart didn't move. 2 lifetimes as a single man, and this was the first time a girl, a beautiful, kind, gentle girl, had ever confessed to me like this. I was touched, but I wasn't swept away either. I could tell she had real feelings for me, but I also knew her emotions were tangled up with her fear of the future and last night's intense experience. She'd probably decided she'd never become a mage, and between marrying a stranger and choosing someone she already cared about, the choice was obvious. Still, I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. Having feelings and acting on them, isn't that what love should be? As someone who believed in free love, I respected her courage. I told her honestly, "Eudora, I'm really happy you feel this way. If after you've calmed down you still feel the same, then I'll do everything I can so we can be together." She insisted she was already calm. She said she loved me. She asked again if I'd leave with her. I asked if she was really willing to leave her parents and brother behind. She said it wouldn't be forever, just a few years, until we had children. Then we'd come back and her father would have no choice but to accept it. I sighed. Running away was a terrible plan. I held her and said, "You don't need to do this. Believe me, you will become a mage." She shook her head. She'd lost all hope. Even wealthy noble families who could easily afford the potions rarely produced actual mages. The odds were just too low. I thought hard about it. Then I made a decision. A risky one. "Eudora, I might have a way to help you become a mage. So you don't have to leave home. But I don't know if it will work." She pulled away from me, suddenly upset. "You're lying. You just don't want to be with me, do you?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. I grabbed her hands. "Calm down. How could I ever dislike you? If you want to be with me, I'll always be by your side. I'm telling the truth. I really do have a method. Trust me." She was skeptical. In the entire history of this world, nobody had ever heard of someone helping another person awaken. "Then try it now," she said. "If it fails, you take me away. Promise." "All right. I promise. Whether it works or not, I'll stay with you." A girl this wonderful. Where would I ever find another one? My plan was to stimulate Eudora's Intang point, the upper dantian where spiritual power sits, using my spiritual energy. That's how I'd accidentally awakened as a mage myself. I had some confidence it could work. I'd once tested pushing spiritual energy into a horse's acupuncture points, and it definitely caused a strong reaction, though I'd stopped before anything happened. But before we could try anything, Eudora's stomach growled loudly. She turned bright red. I was starving too. Looking at her embarrassed face, I suddenly saw her differently. Now that I'd accepted her confession, this girl who might become my wife someday seemed to glow, like a flower about to bloom. I teased her. "You didn't blush when you kissed me, but a rumbling stomach does it." That made her even redder. We headed into the forest to find food. There weren't many magical beasts down below the cliff, so I hoped for wild fruit at least. Then I heard a squeaking sound from a tree hollow. I climbed up expecting something I could roast, and found a tiny baby mink, barely palm-sized, with yellow and purple stripes. I brought it down, disappointed. Can't eat this. It's a newborn. Eudora took it immediately and fell in love. She wanted to keep it as a pet. I said it was probably some low-quality mixed breed. The lightning mink from last night had been pure purple. But when Eudora pulled out the rock boar's magic core, the baby went crazy, squeaking and reaching for it. Then she set it next to the core and it calmed right down, hugging it and falling asleep. It hit me. That's why the mother kept chasing us for this core. Her baby needed it. I pulled out the half-digested purple core from the tiger's stomach and placed it near the baby too. It sensed something familiar and hugged both cores close. I looked at the little thing. Your mom chased me all night and got eaten by a tiger. I avenged her for you, so consider the debt paid. You belong to Eudora now. Eudora scolded me. You can't make a baby pay debts. Don't listen to him, little one. I'll spoil you rotten. She tucked it into her pocket with both cores. I pretended to be jealous about being replaced so quickly. As we walked and searched for food, I asked about her mother's story, how she'd pursued the Viscount. Eudora got shy, then told me the truth. Her mother, a count's daughter, had secretly invited the young baron's son to dinner, drugged his wine, and made sure the deal was done. She'd even hired a life magic specialist to guarantee she'd get pregnant, and ended up with twins. I was speechless. The Viscountess is quite something. Then I looked at Eudora. So all your talk about running away and having babies, you learned all of this from your mother? She said proudly. Of course. These are proven methods. I thought to myself, that's really not something to be proud of. But I kept that to myself. The Viscountess was born in the wrong world. She would have been an absolute force back on Earth. Independent, decisive, and with terrifying execution skills. We found a river, and I jumped in to catch fish while Eudora washed the blood off herself by the bank. I grabbed 2 fat ones, and we roasted them over a fire. She remembered the baby mink in her pocket and asked if it could eat fish. I said it was too young. It probably still needed milk. She decided to name it Yaya, after the cliff where we found it. After eating, she was ready. Tell me how you're going to make me a mage. I told her the method was theoretically sound but untested, and that it would hurt. She said pain was nothing. I had her sit cross-legged with her eyes closed. I placed my finger on her Baihui point at the top of her head and began slowly feeding spiritual energy into her body. She trembled immediately, but told me to keep going. I went as slowly as possible, grinding rather than pushing, to keep the pain manageable. It took a long time, but I carefully opened a path from Baihui down to the Yintang point between her eyebrows. When I reached the Yintang point, I was extremely cautious. I remembered what had happened to me. I pushed in the smallest amount of spiritual energy I could control. The instant it touched her spiritual mass, boom. It exploded apart, just like mine had. I reacted immediately, pouring in more spiritual energy to form a vortex and pulling her scattered spiritual power back together. When everything stabilized, I cut off a portion of my own spiritual energy and left it inside her to keep the vortex spinning on its own, since she had no magic of her own yet to sustain it. I told her to keep the vortex spinning and not let it stop. She opened her eyes, felt for a moment, then threw her arms around me screaming that she could sense elements. She was a mage. She kissed me, jumped around, and then burst into tears of happiness. Then I got very serious. I told her she could never, ever tell anyone that I could help people awaken. She didn't understand at first. Wouldn't kings come begging for my help? I explained that they wouldn't ask. They'd imprison me and turn me into a tool. Enemy nations would try to assassinate me. Even the Mage Association's protection would mean losing my freedom. Only after I became powerful enough, beyond legendary, could I ever reveal this ability. She understood. She swore again with 3 fingers raised. Then immediately she grabbed my arm and suggested we run away together anyway, because now that we were a couple, she didn't want to be apart from me even for a moment. I told her to stop with the running away plans. She argued that 14 wasn't young. Some princess had married the king at 14. She was hugging my arm as she said this, which pressed it against her chest. I shifted uncomfortably. She noticed, looked down, then looked back up at me with a knowing expression. Oh, so you like them big. Don't worry, judging by my mother, mine will definitely grow. I stammered that I was talking about her age, not anything else. Though honestly, for her age, she really wasn't small at all. But I kept that thought firmly to myself. I sighed and told Eudora to stop dreaming about being a queen. I challenged her to cast even a small spell. She froze, then admitted sheepishly that she couldn't. I told her I was in the same boat. I was also a mage but couldn't cast a single spell either. We both needed to go to Hygar Magic Martial Academy in 2 months to actually learn magic. I asked her to try sensing the inside of her own body the way she could sense elements outside. She tried, but could only feel magic being pulled into her spiritual sea from the top of her head. Nothing else. That confirmed my theory. If mages could see inside their own bodies, someone would have discovered acupuncture points long ago. The reason I could do it was because I'd opened my meridians. Regular mages could only sense outward. We went to the river for water, and that's when a unicorn appeared on the opposite bank. It walked up, glanced at us casually, and started drinking without a hint of fear. Eudora gasped. It was beautiful. White body, blue-green mane, a horn about 20 centimeters long. From what I'd researched, that made it a level 4 wind element unicorn. Unicorns were one of the 3 strongest horse-type mount beasts in this world, alongside wind Pegasi and black flame stallions. Unicorns had the most diverse magic, the strongest spells, and the best agility. They could fight independently, not just serve as mounts. What puzzled me was why a unicorn was here at all. They're herd animals that mostly live near elven territory. A lone unicorn in the Score territory made no sense. But I wasn't about to question my luck. I leaped across the river and charged at it. Bad idea. The unicorn fired 3 wind blades at me. I thought no big deal. I'd dealt with the tiger's wind blades all night. I blocked the first one easily, swung at the second, and my sword was cut clean in half. The third blade sailed past me as I threw myself into a desperate roll. It sliced through a boulder behind me, leaving a mirror-smooth cut. Cold sweat covered my body. Each blade was stronger than the last, and they were nothing like the tiger's attacks. This thing was on a completely different level. But I wasn't giving up. I activated Thunder Dragon Shield and charged again. The unicorn stomped the ground and sent a small tornado at me. I dodged sideways, but the tornado changed direction and chased me. Tiny cuts appeared all over my skin just from being near it. I had to blast it apart with a Thunderlight Slash. The unicorn didn't even pause. It stomped again, for tornadoes this time. My scalp went numb. I frantically slashed them apart one by one, and the moment I destroyed the last tornado, 3 more wind blades were already incoming. I blocked the first, rolled past the other 2, and kept pushing forward. When I finally got close, the unicorn simply turned and ran along the riverbank. It was faster than me. I was about to give up when it stopped, turned around, and fired more wind blades at me. It was toying with me. The unicorn was kiting me, running away, stopping to fire spells, then running again. Tornadoes, wind blades, over and over. I was getting shredded. Then I noticed it had run along the water's edge and was standing in the shallows. That gave me an idea. I launched my Thunder Dragon straight at the incoming tornadoes. The collision created a massive explosion. The unicorn didn't expect the dragon could detach and attack on its own. While it was stunned, I burst through the blast and sprinted toward it. Before it could run, I hit the water with Thunder Spider Web. Normally the range wouldn't reach, but the water conducted the electricity straight to its hooves. It froze up, paralyzed. I got hit by my own lightning too since I was standing in the same water, but my resistance to lightning was high enough that I recovered almost instantly. I threw away my broken sword, leaped onto the unicorn's back, locked my arms around its neck, and squeezed my legs around its belly. The moment the paralysis wore off, it went absolutely wild, bucking, spinning, screaming. But I held on. All horse-type magical beasts stop using magic once someone's riding them, so at least I didn't have to worry about more tornadoes. Owen's voice came from the distance, calling for us. Eudora shouted back immediately. He'd climbed down the cliff alone, too steep for the others. He'd followed our trail markers and the dead tiger to find us. He saw the unicorn and was shocked. There shouldn't be one anywhere near this territory. Eudora begged him to help me, but Owen said taming a unicorn is a one-person job. Whoever gives up first loses. He couldn't interfere. The unicorn couldn't shake me on land, so it jumped into the middle of the river. The water wasn't deep, but it was enough to submerge me while I sat on its back. I held my breath. It kept thrashing underwater. I thought, if you couldn't throw me off on dry land, water won't change anything. During the chaos, the unicorn tiger's horn, which I'd tucked into my waistband, slipped free and sank. It hurt to lose, but the unicorn was worth far more. The horn rolled across the riverbed and landed on a large flat stone. The magic core attached to the horn suddenly lit up, like something had triggered it. Then the entire stone began glowing with a grayish-white light. Owen recognized it immediately from the shore. That's a magic array. Linley, get out of there. I let go of the unicorn and tried to swim away, but it was too late. A barrier rose from the stone and sealed both me and the unicorn inside. The light grew blinding. Then everything, the water, the unicorn, and me, vanished in a flash of gray-white light. From the riverbank, I heard Eudora's scream cut off as the world disappeared around me. Owen dove into the river and found the stone, now cracked into several pieces. He came back and told Eudora it was a teleportation array. That's the only kind of magic formation that makes everything inside it vanish instantly, including the water. He figured the unicorn had probably arrived through this same array by accident, which explained why one was in our territory at all. Eudora wanted to follow me through, but Owen told her the array was broken. She collapsed crying. He calmed her down, saying I was resourceful and already a high-level warrior. The plan was to get back, notify the Viscount, and find a mage who could repair the array. Eudora pulled herself together and agreed. On the way back, they met up with Luca's group. Eudora kept giving Luca murderous looks the whole way. Once they reached the mansion and Owen rode off to catch the Viscount, Eudora dragged Luca into a room and started punching and kicking him, screaming that this was all his fault for insisting on the hunting trip. She yelled that if her Linley got hurt, Luca was dead. Luca was completely lost. Wait, what do you mean you're Linley? Since when is he yours? She told him flat out. She loved me. We were together now, and it was final. Then she told him to train harder, or she'd tell everyone he'd been spying on the maids bathing. Luca was stunned. He asked how their father would ever agree. The status gap was too wide. Eudora said their father had no power to refuse anymore, because she was now a mage. And so was I. Luca's jaw nearly hit the floor. He slapped himself to check if he was dreaming. It hurt. He crouched on the ground muttering, "You're both mages, and I'm just a stupid warrior." The clown was me all along. Eudora told him that if I didn't come back on my own, they'd go find me after graduation. And if he wasn't at least elite level by then, she'd tell everyone about him stealing the maid's underwear. You know about that too? I know a lot more than that. Meanwhile, I was spinning through some kind of void. When the spinning stopped, I was underwater. I looked around. No Eudora, no Owen, no river. Just a lake surrounded by unfamiliar terrain. I spotted the unicorn floating unconscious nearby, grabbed it, and swam us both to shore. For a second, I wondered if I'd been transported to another world entirely. Then I looked at the unicorn. No, just teleported somewhere. The unicorn woke up and tried to bolt, but collapsed after 2 steps. I pinned it down easily. It struggled for a while, then gave up. I asked if it surrendered and told it to call out twice if yes. It did. I cautiously let go. It stood up, stayed beside me, and called out twice more. It had accepted me. I sat down on the ground and took stock. My situation was terrible, wounds everywhere, no weapon, clothes reduced to basically a loincloth. I looked at the unicorn and said, "This is your fault. Your tornadoes barely hurt, but they're expert level at destroying clothes." It called out twice. No idea if it understood. I dove back into the lake to look for the teleportation array, but found nothing. So I climbed onto the unicorn's back and said, "Let's go figure out where we are." I rode the unicorn into the forest and climbed the tallest tree I could find. Nothing but green in every direction. I was stranded in the middle of a massive forest with no weapon, no clothes, and no idea where I was. I decided to focus on what I could control. First priority, find shelter, heal up, and make myself presentable enough that I wouldn't be mistaken for a lunatic if I ran into people. I found a huge broken tree near the lake, about 6 or 7 meters across, and figured I could hollow it out into a shelter. Then I looked at my empty hands. No sword, no tools. Just the tiger's horn, which was pointy but useless for carving wood. Then I looked at the unicorn. Her tornadoes had been excellent at shredding things all day. I walked over with what must have been a suspicious grin. Hey, unicorn buddy, see that tree? Could you blast a hole in it for me? Nothing. Complete silence. She ignored me. I tried again. Still nothing. Then it hit me. Maybe she was female. Excuse me, Miss Unicorn, she neighed in response. So she was a she. After some coaxing and a promise of grilled fish, she reluctantly blasted several tornadoes into the tree and carved out a 4-meter square room, even shaping the entrance to my specifications. I caught fish and we ate together. Turns out unicorns are omnivores. They'll eat anything, including biting enemies in a fight. I decided to name her. She rejected chasing wind, flying shadow, and lightning flash, shook her head at everyone. Finally, I offered Gyna, after the Norse wind goddess from my past life. She accepted that one. I decided not to rush out of this forest. This was actually perfect. I needed a level 5 lightning magic core to break through to master level, and back in score territory, I'd never find one without attracting attention. The one I'd used for my elite breakthrough was stolen from my father's collection. But this forest was full of powerful creatures. I could sense strong presences everywhere. I also wanted to properly test and refine my modified combat techniques. Back home, I'd always held back because the effects were too flashy and noticeable. Here, nobody was watching. I could go all out. Could I beat a level 5 beast? With my improved techniques and Gyna backing me up, I believed so. At minimum, we could always escape. So the two of us settled into our tree hollow and made this unknown forest our temporary home. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the same forest, a group of 7 adventurers was moving through the trees. 5 men, 2 women, all heavily armed. Their leader, a warrior named Stephen, who carried a massive greatsword on his back, announced they'd entered the deep zone of a place called the Abyss Forest. He ordered everyone to suppress their energy signatures to avoid provoking level 6 or level 7 beasts. A mage named Phil cast a presence-concealing spell over the group. Another mage named Marshall pulled out a biological energy detection device, a palm-sized disc that could sense level 6 and above creatures within 10 kilometers. It showed nothing nearby, but a female warrior named Lita reminded him that some level 6 beasts could cross 10 kilometers in under a minute. An archer named Petty told everyone to stop talking and keep moving. While I was settling into the forest, a team of 7 adventurers was making their way into the same place, apparently called the Abyss Forest. Their leader was a master-level warrior named Stephen, who carried a greatsword. The group had 6 master-level fighters and 1 elite-level support mage named Phil. They were hunting for a fire-type level 6 magic core. They had a detection device that could sense level 6 and above creatures within 10 kilometers. They moved cautiously, bypassing a wolf pack of 12 level 4s and a level 5 that wasn't worth the trouble. Their route took them toward what they called the Titan Tree, the same massive tree I'd climbed earlier. Apparently, it was a terrifying level 8 magic tree, but it was dormant most of the time and safe to pass as long as nobody attacked it. The mage marshal joked that it might have reached level 9 by now. Near a lake, probably the same one I'd been camping at, their detector picked up a level 6 lightning beast to the northwest, showing frequent energy fluctuations that meant it was fighting. They debated whether to investigate. A warrior named Lita suggested checking it out. Stephen agreed, figuring if the beast was weakened enough they might be able to take advantage. They got closer, and Phil sent out her magic eyes to scout. Then she went completely silent. Stephen pressed her. Well, what do you see? She said, stunned. A human and a unicorn are dominating a thunder battle bear. Marshall was confused. Why was Phil's detection magic reading the human as a level 5 creature? Petty the archer pointed out the real issue. How was a master-level warrior pressing a level 6 beast? Phil corrected them. The unicorn is just watching from a distance. It's only the human fighting. Stephen ordered them to move in for a closer look. Phil warned them the human's fighting style was strange. Marshall brushed it off. There were 6 master-level fighters on their team, so what was there to worry about? Stephen shut him down. How many of you could dominate a level 6 thunder battle bear? Being careful costs nothing, Phil said quietly. You'll understand when you see him. That human was me. I had no idea I was being watched. The adventurer team came through the trees and froze when they saw me fighting. I'd been in this forest 4 months by now, already broken through to master level. improved all my combat techniques, and even created a new fighting style based on the 18 dragon subduing palms from a martial arts novel I'd read in my past life. The moves were probably fictional back on Earth, but I'd only copied the forms and figured out how to make them work with spiritual energy on my own. The results were incredible. Each palm strike launched a thunder dragon that could track its target. The Thunder Battle Bear couldn't dodge them and had to take every hit head-on. When it countered with its signature Thunder Strike, a technique Steven later admitted he couldn't take easily, I met it palm to palm with. Proud Dragon shows remorse and matched its power evenly. The truth was, though, I couldn't actually hurt the bear. Its lightning resistance was even higher than mine, so my attacks looked devastating but barely scratched it. Meanwhile, my burst techniques consumed too much energy to sustain. The bear was basically my sparring partner. I'd come fight it whenever I wanted to practice and leave whenever I got tired. Gaina just sat on the sideline watching every time. When she warned me about the humans approaching, I immediately disengaged and went to her side. The bear left too, clearly glad to be done with me. Finally, people. 4 months alone in this forest, and these were the first humans I'd seen. My only ticket out. Their leader Steven introduced himself politely. He told me they were from the Imperial capital, here to hunt a level 6 fire beast for a magic core to help someone break through to legendary. He called this place the Abyss Forest. That explained why I could never find my way out. I'd been wandering the deep zone, where level 7 and 8 beasts lurked and kept getting turned around. I powered down, dismissed the thunder dragons, dropped my burst mode. My purple glowing hair fell back to black, my aura vanished completely. I looked like an ordinary teenager. I told them my name, introduced Gaina, explained I'd been teleported here by accident, and asked if they could guide me out. That's when the tall female warrior, Lita, started whispering to the others. She pointed out that my age made master level impossible, that I was suspiciously calm for someone who'd been alone. For months, that my explosive transformation technique was something she'd never even heard of, and that not even a legendary warrior could dominate a level 6 Thunder Battle Bear the way I had. She said I was definitely hiding something and was probably dangerous. The archer Petty agreed. Safest option was to leave without engaging me at all. I stood there dumbfounded. I was telling the complete truth, and nobody believed me. I said, just because you can't train that fast doesn't mean nobody can. I'm a genius. Everything I said is real. I need you to help me get out of here. They just stared at me with even more suspicion. Phil spoke up for me, saying she believed I was telling the truth and had no hostile intent. She called it women's intuition. Marshall agreed. Someone with my power had no reason to target their group. Steven pointed out that anyone with a unicorn probably had a serious background. After some discussion, Steven said they couldn't take me out yet since they'd just entered the deep forest and still needed their fire-type magic core. But I could travel with them and leave together once they finished. I agreed and offered to fight alongside them as payment for guiding me out. Steven suggested we start by hunting the Thunder Battle Bear together to practice teamwork. He even said I could pick first from the spoils. I rode Gaina and shot ahead to intercept the bear. When the team caught up, Steven was shocked by Gaina's speed. She was far faster than a normal level 5 unicorn should be. Lita muttered that neither I nor my unicorn were normal. I activated what I called Thunder Transformation, my own burst technique, inspired by the Lightning Minx power-up. My hair stood straight up and turned purple, lightning crackled across my body. It looked exactly like a Super Saiyan transformation from the manga I used to read. I'd originally planned to name it Thunderburst, but the visual effect was so cool that my inner child couldn't resist. The fight began. I engaged the bear palm to palm while the team surrounded it. Marshall launched a fireball, but the bear spat out a massive lightning orb that swallowed it and kept going. I sent one of my thunder dragons to intercept. It devoured the lightning ball and flew back to me, stronger than before. Petty fired an arrow infused with wind energy, but the bear activated its defense. Every strand of fur on its body crackled with electricity, forming a net that blocked the shot easily. Steven and Lita joined the melee. The bear fired a thick bolt of chain lightning that blasted Steven away, then bounced to Lita, then to William, then toward Carter. My thunder dragon lunged forward and swallowed the weakened bolt, growing larger and more powerful. It roared and charged the bear. The bear countered with another lightning orb, and the collision sent electricity exploding outward. Only Lita and I, both lightning types, stayed close. Everyone else retreated. Lita was staring at my thunder dragons in disbelief. A defensive technique that could also absorb enemy attacks, grow stronger, and be controlled to fight independently? She'd never seen, heard of, or even dreamed of anything like it. She started fighting alongside me, using her speed to support from my flank. Her ranged attacks barely scratched the bear's lightning resistance. Then she saw what she thought was an opening. After I hit the bear with a dragon palm strike, she dashed in with her signature move, Thunder Flash, turning herself into a bolt of lightning aimed at the bear. But it was a trap she'd set for herself. My attack hadn't actually stunned the bear. I'd just been creating space to catch my breath. The bear's electrified paw slammed into her sword and sent devastating lightning surging through her arms. I'd seen her charge in and knew she was in trouble. I sprinted after her and slapped my palm against her back just as the bear's power hit. Spiritual energy rushed from my hand into her body, instantly dispersing the incoming lightning and reinforcing her arms. She held her ground against the bear's full power strike, shocked that some unknown energy had just saved her and even strengthened her. I yanked Lita back by her collar before the bear could follow up. Steven saw me slap her back earlier and thought I'd attacked her, but Lita quickly confirmed I'd saved her by transferring energy into her body. Phil cast a life magic buff called Physical Enhancement on everyone. I felt about a 10% boost in strength and speed, enough to finally overpower the Thunder Battle Bear. I told everyone to give it everything they had because my burst mode wouldn't last forever. The whole team went all out. Steven charged in with his greatsword. Marshall bombarded it with fire spells. Petty rained down arrows. Gyna fired wind blades. She couldn't use tornadoes without hitting our allies. We were pushing the bear back hard. Then it snapped. It roared, its body swelled in size, and both paws lit up with blinding lightning. It ignored Steven's sword cutting into its body and swung a paw at me with power way beyond anything before. I caught it with my left palm and instantly knew I was in trouble. The force was on a completely different level. I was launched into the air, spinning several times before landing. My entire left arm was shredded, bleeding, trembling, sparking with residual lightning. Basically useless. I heard Steven shout Lita's name. She'd been right behind me when I got swatted away, and the bear's follow-up caught her before she could react. Her thunder shield shattered instantly under the enraged strike. She came flying toward me, coughing blood. I caught her with my right hand, but she was already unconscious. I set her down and grabbed her sword off the ground. The moment my hand closed around the hilt, I felt my lightning element surge. It was a magic weapon. Perfect. Phil was already casting healing magic on Lita. I checked my reserves. I could manage one more push at full power. I summoned Thunder Dragon Shield and watched the bear break through Steven and William's defense line, charging straight at me. It knew I was its biggest threat. I swung the sword and launched a new technique, Thunder Sword Chi. A crescent of pure lightning energy flew from the blade, sliced through the bear's lightning ball, and cut deep into its forearm, right to the bone. Blood sprayed everywhere. Having a sword again after 4 months felt incredible. I followed up with Thunder Dragon Binding. Lightning spread from my sword tip across the ground, and a dragon erupted beneath the bear, coiling around it. The bear broke free almost instantly, but that 1 second was all I needed. It fired another lightning ball. I used a master-level technique, Thunderlight Thrust, and drove the sword forward. A needle-thin beam of lightning pierced straight through the ball, detonating it, and punched into the bear's side, blasting a hole the size of a bowl through its body. The bear was dying, and it knew it. Lightning erupted across its entire body. Steven screamed, "Legendary technique! Heaven's Thunder Explosion!" I didn't hesitate. I scooped up the unconscious Lita, picked a clear direction with no obstacles, and activated Thunder Shift, my modified version of Thunder Step, trading all maneuverability for maximum straight-line speed. I shot forward like a beam of light. Gyna bolted after me. Behind us, the bear detonated. Hundreds of lightning bolts crashed down in a 100-meter radius around it. Steven barely got a protective scroll open in time to shield the remaining 6 members. The barrier held, but just barely. I outran the blast radius, but slammed into a tree at the end. I'd already cut my speed before impact. So I survived, but my legs were screaming. Thunder Shift was a failed experiment in my opinion, blindingly fast, but completely uncontrollable. Only good for short emergency dashes, and it punished my legs badly if I held it too long. I looked back and saw Steven's group had survived the Heaven's Thunder explosion behind multiple layers of shields and stone walls. Nobody was hurt. That was my first time seeing a legendary-level technique, and it was terrifying. Now I understood why people said only legendary and above counted as true powerhouses. No amount of master-level warriors could survive that without proper defenses. The Thunder Battle Bear collapsed after unleashing that final attack. I rushed back with Lita, drove a sword through the bear's forehead, and took out the magic core. I only claimed the core as my share. Steven took the rest, and made the entire bear corpse vanish with some kind of spatial equipment. Phil said Lita would be fine after a few healing spells and would recover by evening. Then Steven properly introduced everyone. Lita was a lightning-type master like me, focused on speed and technique. Marshall was a fire mage. William was Steven's personal guard, an earth-type warrior. Petty was a rare, bow-wielding wind master. Phil was an elite-level support mage specializing in life magic, the most important person in any team. Carter was Phil's personal bodyguard, an ice warrior. I've been wondering why Carter seemed to be doing nothing during the fight. Turns out he was just a dedicated bodyguard with only one job. Phil came over to heal my left arm. She was wrapped head to toe in her robe. I couldn't even see her face. Her healing magic felt strange, itchy and warm, but it worked fast. My arm stopped hurting and the wounds started closing. Lita thanked me for saving her. I told her teammates help each other and suggested we rest at my camp. Gyna reluctantly agreed to carry Lita after I sweet-talked her for a while. At the tree hollow, Steven lent me spare clothes. I rode Gyna to the lake, washed off properly, and threw away the animal skins I'd been wearing for months. Finally, real clothes, no more suffocating heat and smell. When I got back looking human again, Marshall joked that he'd thought I was some kind of humanoid magical beast when they first saw me. Steven asked about my dragon palm techniques. I explained that the dragons were based on a mythical creature from my homeland, completely different from real dragons in this world. He was impressed by how lifelike they were. They moved independently, roared, and fought like actual summoned creatures. The truth was, the roaring was just me vibrating spiritual energy to create sound effects. I'd spent days perfecting it. And all those dramatic technique names I shouted during battle? Pure showmanship. Every palm strike actually had the same power regardless of what I yelled. But looking cool mattered. I told them straight, power is temporary. Looking cool is forever. Who can resist an awesome-looking technique? Marshall burst out laughing and said I was absolutely right. Being flashy was the key to attracting girls, and he saw great potential in me. I noticed Lita staring at him with utter disgust. After I saved Lita, the group relaxed around me quite a bit. I told them the full story of how I got teleported here. They told me that my kingdom, Shoes, was extremely far to the west, so far that only Phil had even seen it mentioned in a book or two. Nobody pressed me about my training methods. That's considered private in this world. I told them the palm techniques were just a special combat skill from my martial art, designed for situations where I lose my weapon. They accepted that explanation. I wasn't worried about anyone trying anything shady either. Attacking me would gain them nothing, and being on good terms with me could be very useful later. Lita needed to heal overnight, so we stayed at my camp. I went off to meditate and recover. That gave me time to reflect on the 4 months I'd spent here and everything I'd developed. The truth is, modifying combat techniques wasn't that hard for me conceptually. The difficult part was practicing each one until I could use it smoothly in battle. Normal warriors can't control a technique after releasing it. Their magic drives the elements into a specific attack pattern, and once it leaves the body, that's it. No adjustments. That's why traditional combat techniques tend to be simple and rigid. But my spiritual energy can leave my body and still be controlled. That changes everything. Thunder Dragon Shield was originally just a static lightning barrier called Thunder Shield. I reshaped the elemental energy into dragon form, and by using spiritual energy to guide and detonate it remotely, I turned a defensive skill into something that could attack, absorb enemy lightning, and fight independently. Thunder Spider Web originally blanketed an area with paralyzing electricity that hit everyone, allies included. I modified it, so the spiritual energy in the web lets me concentrate the discharge on specific targets and even form a dragon to bind them continuously. Thunderlight / originally just enchanted my weapon with lightning and extended its reach in a wide fan. I compressed the scattered energy into a focused crescent-shaped blade of concentrated force, dramatically increasing both range and power. I could even fire it without a weapon, or keep the energy on the blade for continuous enchantment instead of releasing it. One technique, two completely different applications. Thunderstep couldn't really be modified much. It just surges lightning through your legs for speed. The only improvement I made was routing it through my leg meridians for better agility. The real breakthrough came after reaching master level, when I learned Thunder Force Amplification. The original version gently activates lightning across your whole body for a sustained boost to strength, defense, and speed. But it covers your internal organs too, and organs are much weaker than muscle and bone, so the duration is limited by how much your insides can handle. Since I channel everything through my meridians instead of saturating my flesh directly, the strain on my organs dropped to almost nothing. The limiting factor became my meridian's endurance, which was basically unlimited thanks to years of conditioning. So I cranked the gentle activation up to explosive activation across every meridian simultaneously, creating what I called Thunder Transformation. The boost was game-changing. That's how a master-level warrior like me could fight a legendary-level beast head-on. Then I wondered, if explosive activation worked so well for the whole body, what about pushing it even further for just my legs? That's how Thunder Shift was born. Instead of explosive activation, I used detonation-level activation. The first time I tried it, the raw energy output was insane, but it instantly destroyed both my legs. I spent nearly a month lying in my tree hollow recovering. If Gyna hadn't been there to bring me food, I probably would have starved to death. So Thunder Shift remained a last resort emergency sprint. Incredibly fast, completely uncontrollable, and devastating to my own body. After my legs healed from the Thunder Shift disaster, I carefully experimented with smaller amounts of lightning to find the minimum needed for detonation. Turns out there's a threshold. Too little and nothing happens, like a gas that won't ignite below a certain concentration. I risked serious injury testing different amounts, but eventually found a usable version. It's still beyond my body's safe limits and completely uncontrollable, a pure escape technique with side effects, just like those emergency skills in cultivation novels. I also refined Thunderlight Thrust, a master-level range technique that fires a piercing beam of lightning. My only improvement was tighter control over the element concentration for more speed and power, plus the ability to detonate the remaining energy on impact. It became my strongest single attack. As for having two Thunder Dragons at once, that's simply dual casting. The battle mark produces one, and I manually replicate the process with spiritual energy to create a second. After practicing a technique enough times through the battle mark, I can memorize the pattern and reproduce it without the mark. Only the dragon shield stacks properly though. Other techniques just fire two copies simultaneously. The dragon subduing palms? Pure counterfeit. I just shape-released elements into dragon form. It looks incredible, but has no special properties like real combat techniques do. No paralyzing, no piercing, no shielding. Just raw damage with superior flexibility and no weapon requirement. All my modified techniques share one weakness: heavy energy consumption. The extra spiritual energy needed for post-release control adds up fast. The rest of my 4 months went into studying Gyna and her magic core. I ended up opening her Ren and Du meridians. Getting her to agree was hard. It's extremely painful, and I had to explain the benefits clearly enough for a level 4 intelligence to understand. But once completed, her training speed, stamina, and agility all skyrocketed. She broke through to level 5. During the process, I discovered that a beast's magic core sits at the position corresponding to a human's Intang point. The core is essentially a fusion of elemental power and spiritual force. When Gyna broke through, her core grew and changed internally, which I believe is why beasts automatically learn new spells at each level. I also found that cores automatically absorb incoming attacks of the same element and repel other elements, which explains why beasts have such high elemental resistance. Another finding: Beasts have far more elemental power than magic power in their bodies. The small amount of magic in their flesh constantly strengthens them, consuming and replenishing in a continuous cycle. After thoroughly studying how the core functions, I tried creating an artificial one inside myself using a portion of my spiritual power combined with elemental energy. I placed this pseudo-core in my middle dantian at the Shanzhong point. I didn't dare put it near my spiritual C since that's a mage's foundation and I know too little about magic to risk it. The pseudo-core works similarly to a beast's core in many ways, but I didn't gain any automatic spells from it. Something is still missing that I can't figure out. The pseudo-core isn't a physical object. Even if someone cut me open, they'd find nothing there. It exists the same way magic and spiritual power exist, real but invisible. I can't explain the phenomenon. Now my 3 dantians each store something different. Upper for spiritual power, middle for elemental energy via the pseudo-core, lower for spiritual energy. And because of the pseudo-core, my appearance changed permanently. My hair stayed black, but my eyes turned purple, always flickering with faint lightning, even when I'm not using any power. When I came out of the tree hollow that evening, Marshall was roasting meat over a fire. It smelled incredible. They were cooking the Thunder Battle Bear, legendary grade beast meat, a rare treat. Stephen cut me a piece. Marshall had used fire magic for perfect temperature control, and they'd actually used spices. After months of plain roasted fish and unseasoned meat, I nearly cried. While we ate, I couldn't resist asking how mages train. Marshall asked my age. When I said 14, the whole group went quiet. A 14-year-old master-level warrior was apparently unheard of. Marshall said knowing how mages trained wouldn't help me since you can't awaken a spiritual C after 14. Then Phil spoke up from under her oversized hood. She said that when she healed my arm earlier, she'd been close enough to sense a faint trickle of magic entering my spiritual C. It was extremely weak. My spiritual C clearly hadn't been trained, but her unusually strong perception had picked it up. "Did you naturally awaken your spiritual C?" she asked. Everyone stared at me. There was no point hiding it now. Yes, I did. Marshall looked like he'd seen a ghost. A 14-year-old master warrior who's also a naturally awakened mage? This is insane. Phil said it actually explained why my combat techniques had such unusual flexibility. Mages can use spiritual power to control techniques after releasing them. That surprised me. I'd been using spiritual energy, not spiritual power, to control my techniques. But I couldn't explain the difference without revealing too much, so I stayed quiet. Then Phil casually mentioned something even more shocking. She wasn't human. That's why her perception was so sharp. She was completely covered by her robes, clearly not wanting people to know what race she was. I was burning with curiosity, but held my tongue. Marshall explained something important. Since I'd used lightning elements to strengthen my body as a high-level warrior, my affinity for lightning was now far higher than for other elements. Learning lightning magic would be easy, but other elements would be much harder, maybe 2 levels weaker at best. That meant I'd become a single-element specialist like him. Marshall was actually a fire mage who'd also trained as a fire warrior to high level, deliberately specializing so he could research fire-type battle marks for his merchant family. They were hoping he'd eventually create legendary-level marks, though he wasn't even sure he'd reach legendary himself. He asked if I could meditate yet. I told him I had zero knowledge about magic. That's exactly why I'd been asking. Marshall gave me a basic explanation. After awakening, a mage uses meditation to convert magic power into spiritual power, then uses that spiritual power to expand the spiritual C. A mage's level depends on how strong their spiritual power is and how large their spiritual C grows. The bigger the C, the wider your sensory range. The stronger your spiritual power, the better your control. The fundamental difference between warriors and mages. Warriors use magic power to drive elements through battle marks to release combat techniques. Mages use spiritual power directly to arrange elements into magic patterns and cast spells. I asked where regular magic power fits in. Marshall said spiritual power is magic power, just a higher form of it. Magicologists have long considered spiritual power to be the superior energy, evolved from magic. Phil disagreed immediately. She said her teacher believed magic power is actually a complex mixture of energies, and spiritual power is just one component extracted through meditation. They started arguing. Apparently, this is a long-standing debate in the magic world. The superior energy school versus the mixed energy school. Stephen sighed and told me to ignore them. They've been fighting about this for ages. I asked what magicologists were. Stephen explained they're researchers who focus on magical innovation and practical applications rather than combat. Apparently, they'd recently invented magical refrigerators, air conditioners, and stoves that were hugely popular in the imperial capital. My jaw dropped. That sounded like an industrial revolution, a magical one. My hometown was so remote we'd never heard about any of this. Stephen finally told them to stop fighting and teach me meditation instead. They both shouted, "I'll teach him," at the same time. Marshall argued I should learn the superior energy method because it boosts the power of both spells and combat techniques. Phil countered that I should learn the mixed energy method because it gives finer control over released techniques and magic, and my techniques were already plenty powerful. They started bickering again until Lita, still recovering from her injuries, snapped at them both to shut up because she needed quiet. I suggested they each teach me their method and let me figure out which suited me better. I let Phil go first, ladies first, which Marshall grudgingly accepted. I memorized both methods carefully. Then I asked some key questions. Phil told me that both methods convert roughly the same amount of magic into spiritual power, and that the resulting spiritual power looks identical. Nobody can actually tell the two types apart. Many mages even alternate between both methods, gaining small improvements in both power and control, though not as much as specializing in one. I asked one final question. Why does spiritual power need to form a vortex? Phil explained that the vortex keeps spiritual power concentrated. If it scatters completely, you become brain dead. The vortex also attracts magic into the spiritual sea. She warned me never to use up all my spiritual power. I told them I'd try both methods and see which fit me better. I sat down cross-legged right in front of them to try meditating for the first time. I figured if something went wrong, having two experienced mages nearby would be helpful. As I focused all my attention on controlling my spiritual power, I naturally let my guard down and my aura leaked out. Marshall and Phil initially just remarked that my ability to conceal my power was impressive. When suppressed, I felt like a regular person. But then they noticed something that made them both start shaking. My magic wasn't entering my spiritual sea through the space between my eyebrows like normal mages. It was coming in through the top of my head, through Bai Wei. Marshall could barely speak. Hey, a Tongtian. Tongtian mage. Phil was just as shaken. They called Stephen over immediately. Marshall was practically shouting that they needed to pack up and take me back right now. Forget the fire magic core. Everyone gathered around, confused. Phil explained, Tongtian mage, meaning, reaching the heavens, is an incredibly rare type of mage whose magic pours in from the top of their head directly into the spiritual sea. Throughout history, every single Tongtian mage who didn't die young reached at least saint level. They advance at extraordinary speed. The Alliance hadn't seen one in over 200 years. The last one was someone named Dongfang Xiao, now the strongest mage god of the Uni Empire. Stephen asked if they could be wrong. Both mages said absolutely not. Any mage would recognize this phenomenon. They'd only detected it because I was so focused on my first meditation that I dropped all concealment while they were standing right next to me. The team debated what to do. Stephen suggested two options. Turn me over to the Mage Association for an immediate reward, or secretly befriend me and invest in my future for bigger returns later. Marshall and Phil both shot down the second idea. I didn't need their help. Once I entered any magic academy, my talent would be obvious. The association would make me a priority, and the resources they could provide would dwarf anything this team could offer. A 14-year-old master warrior who was also a Tongtian mage? I'd probably reach legendary soon. And at that point, what could they possibly offer me? Phil said the best play was simple. Explain everything honestly, bring me back safely, and claim the association's reward for discovering a Tongtian mage. Meanwhile, I was oblivious to all this. I'd been carefully comparing the two meditation methods and found that, just as they'd said, the spiritual power produced by both seemed identical to me. I'd need actual practice to tell the difference. When I opened my eyes, everyone was staring at me like I was a priceless treasure. Why are you all looking at me like that? Phil asked if I knew what a Tongtian mage was. I had no idea, I asked if it was some kind of elemental specialty. She explained that it's a rare gift where magic pours into the spiritual sea from the crown of the head continuously, and during meditation the intake speed becomes enormously fast. It's called heaven and earth body infusion. Isn't that how it works for everyone? I asked, genuinely confused. Marshall sighed. We're not that lucky. Then they explained just how different I was from every other mage in the world. When I understood what being a Tantion mage meant, I couldn't stop shaking. Every single one in history who didn't die young reached, at least saint level. A direct path to mage god. And there were only 5 living mage gods on the entire continent. But what excited me even more was something they didn't know. I could create Tantion mages. All it takes is opening the pathway from Baihui to Yintang. I'd already done it for myself, and I'd opened Eudora's Yintang through Baihui too. If I'd completed the full connection for her, she'd be one as well. The potential was staggering. But I forced myself to calm down. This had to stay secret. Steven said they'd abandon the fire core hunt and take me out of the forest first thing tomorrow morning. Getting me to the Mage Association safely would earn them a legendary magic core of any element they wanted as a reward. I felt bad about derailing their mission, but they insisted. I mentioned that I still couldn't cast any spells. I'd just learned meditation and didn't know what magic patterns were. Marshall said that could wait for Magic Academy. Neither he nor Phil knew any lightning spells to teach me anyway. The next morning, we headed out. We passed the Titan tree, and I learned it was a level 8 magic tree. I nearly choked. I'd climbed that thing multiple times during my first weeks here. Lita laughed and said we couldn't wake it even if we tried. When we reached the boundary between the deep zone and the outer forest, I finally understood why I'd been trapped for 4 months. There was a massive illusion, a ray at the border, set up over 1,000 years ago by a mage god named Lilith to prevent beasts from escaping and keep people from wandering in. It was only level 6, enough to block legendary level creatures, but its scale was enormous. Lilith later had an entire city named after her. Steven pulled out a guidance scroll, a magic compass with a shimmering needle, and we followed it through the illusion for over an hour before finally emerging into the outer forest. Everyone released their master-level auras. In the outer zone, beasts were only level 2 to 4, and they scattered immediately. Even other adventurer groups we passed gave us a wide berth. Apparently in the wilderness, stronger groups robbing weaker ones was common. Steven told me that Lilith City had a Mage Association branch, so it was very safe inside. I asked about the mage god's lifespan. He said even mage gods only live about 600 years. Humanity's biggest weakness is short lifespans compared to other races. Phil noticed I was clueless about basic world affairs and offered to brief me. She explained that 538 years ago, an abyss rift opened in the northern part of the eastern continent, releasing demons, chaotic creatures from another plane who knew only destruction. Facing this threat, the 5 major races, humans, elves, beastmen, dwarves, and dragons, formed an alliance led by the elves. Since then, there had been no major wars between alliance members. The Mage Association rose to prominence during this era because mages were the most effective force against demons. The alliance eventually pushed the demons back toward the rift, but couldn't close it. The closer you get, the stronger demons become. The occupied territory had become completely corrupted, uninhabitable for normal people, fully transformed into an extension of the abyss. Phil filled me in on the continent's geography. The eastern and central continents had been politically stable for over 1,000 years, each dominated by major empires. The Elven Empire and Uni Empire in the east, the Dwarven Empire, Beastman Empire, and Augene Empire in the center. The western continent, where I'm from, was a mess. Over 20 small countries constantly at war, separated from the center by the Shilon mountain range. The Mage Association only maintained small branches in each western kingdom's capital, mainly to train new mages and send talented ones east. My kingdom of Shu sat on the far western coast, basically the middle of nowhere. We reached Lilith City just before nightfall. The walls were enormous. Built with magic, they were taller than any I'd seen in my past life. Steven said they were originally for beast-tied defense, but after Mage God Lilith created the illusion array, they became more of a landmark. You could still see faded magic formations carved into the stone, though they'd probably stopped working centuries ago. At the gate, the registrar's eyes nearly popped out when he saw Gina. He stammered, "You unicorn." Stephen calmly confirmed it. We registered our names and levels and entered the city. Inside, the streets were bright and lively despite the late hour. Shops, lanterns, crowds of people. It reminded me of night markets from my old life. Stephen led us into a restaurant called the Adventurer's Home and ordered everything on the menu plus wine. Then a girl came over pushing a food cart. When she got close, I noticed something behind her. A tail? Fluffy, swaying back and forth. I stared. I couldn't help it. All those months dreaming about beast ears and tails back when I first arrived in this world, and I'd never actually seen a beast person until now. That tail looked softer than any cat I'd ever petted. Lita smacked me on the head. My little brother here has never been out before. He's never seen a beast person. Please don't mind him. The girl, called Shaoli, smiled sweetly and said she was used to it. She had white hair and twin tails, a blue hat, a cute face with a hint of childishness. I noticed she had no ears on the sides of her head. They were hidden under the hat. I was dying to know what kind of ears she had. Her tail alone didn't reveal her species. She set down the dishes and walked away, tail swinging. My eyes followed it involuntarily. Lita smacked me again and told me that staring at a beast person's animal features was considered very rude. I apologized and asked what species she was. Marshall scoffed. Who cares? Just a beast man. Stephen immediately snapped at him to shut up, saying beastmen were equal members of the Alliance, and that people from the Augean Empire weren't superior to anyone. Lita explained the history to me. Before the Alliance, the Augean Empire had enslaved many beast people for generations, treating them as a lower species and calling their animal features proof of inferiority. After the Alliance formed, conditions improved slowly. Then about 100 years ago, the Lion Clan produced twin war gods. Combined with their existing god-level shaman and 2 other war gods, the Beastmen suddenly had 5 god-level fighters, more than the Augean Empire. They forced Augean to free all enslaved beast people and return stolen territory. The elves and dragons helped pressure the deal through. Marshall countered that the Uni Empire, where Stephen was from, had looked down on beast people too, only promoting equality later to recruit beastman fighters for the Alliance. Stephen told Marshall to keep those opinions to himself in public. So this world had racial discrimination too. Some things are the same everywhere. I asked why beast people's animal features were seen as proof of being inferior. I said the fluffy tail looked cute to me. Everyone except Phil stared at me like I was crazy. Petty suggested Phil check my eyes, or maybe my brain. I knew I'd said something wrong for this world, so I quickly changed the subject to food. But honestly, I thought they were the ones with the problem. If someone as cute as Shaoli existed in my previous world, with that tail and those hidden ears, she'd be worshipped online. One dance video, and she'd have millions of fans. The food was excellent. By the end of dinner, Marshall and Petty were passed out drunk under the table. Stephen was swaying. Even Lita and Phil had drunk quite a bit. Lita's flushed cheeks actually made her look prettier. I'd refused all alcohol, using my age as an excuse. My past life taught me that stuff was trouble. At the inn, I finally took a proper bath, put on clean clothes, and lay on a soft bed for the first time in 4 months. The wildlife was over. Lying there, I thought about Eudora. She was probably at the academy by now with Luca. She was a Tongtian mage too, though she didn't know it. Had anyone noticed? Was she thinking about me? With her beauty and mage status, she probably had plenty of admirers. Maybe after calming down, she'd realized her feelings were just a heat-of-the-moment thing. A knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. It was Phil, asking if I wanted to go explore the city. I was surprised. She usually kept her distance from everyone. She took me to the central square to see Lilith's statue, with Carter trailing behind as always. On the way, I spotted a shop called Rainbow Light Magic selling weapons, armor, scrolls, and potions. I was amazed to see they even had newspapers. Nothing like that existed back in Shoes. This place was centuries ahead of the Western continent. I asked Phil if they bought magic cores, and she said to go in and find out. I pulled out a cloth bag containing 12 cores, 2 level, 5 and 10 level, 4, collected during my 4 months in the forest. I'd fed all the lower level ones to Gina, who somehow ate cores of every element without complaint. Phil told me to keep the 2 level, 5 cores and sell the rest. The shopkeeper examined them and offered 180 gold coins. Phil confirmed it was fair. Level 4 cores typically went for 15 to 20 gold each. I took the deal. I asked about swords, but Phil said this shop wouldn't have anything suitable for a master-level warrior. The shopkeeper agreed once he learned my rank. His stock was all lower-tier magic weapons. He suggested trying the guild or just grabbing a temporary blade for now. I finally had money again. 180 gold coins, more than my father earned in 5 years back home. Outside the shop, I asked Phil why she told me to keep the level 5 cores. She explained the price gap was enormous. Level 4 cores went for about 20 gold each, but level 5 started at 500 gold minimum. The reason was supply and demand. Since the Alliance had developed master-level martial arts widely to fight the Abyss demons, master-level warriors were common enough that level 4 cores had crashed in price. But level 5 beasts were rare, smart enough to run from fights they couldn't win, and generally required at least 2 master-level warriors working together to hunt. Plus, level 5 cores were essential for master-level magic weapons. Without one embedded, a weapon couldn't channel master-grade techniques properly. Phil raised an eyebrow when I mentioned I'd killed a level 5 beast while still at elite level. She called me a freak. I admitted Gyna had helped. Back then I didn't have my burst techniques yet, and could only barely match the beast. Gyna's speed made the difference. I asked about weapon prices. Phil said Lita's lightning sword cost 1,800 gold. It boosted lightning technique power by about 20% with a 10% increase in element consumption. That was considered mid-tier. The strongest magic weapon she'd ever seen at auction enhanced fire techniques by 50%, came with 2 built-in fire techniques, and had an embedded level 5 core, so it didn't drain extra elements. It sold for 16,000 gold. So much for feeling rich with my 180 gold coins. I couldn't even afford a decent sword. I instinctively reached into my pocket and gripped the Thunder Battle Bear's legendary core. This thing was worth at least 15,000 gold. I kept my hand in my pocket and didn't take it out. Absolutely could not lose this. Phil seemed amused by my protectiveness. Her voice sounded cheerful even though I couldn't see her face under that hood. As always, we arrived at the central square. Lilith's statue stood in the middle, illuminated by magic lights. It was only about 2 meters tall on a modest pedestal, but it was breathtaking. Even carved in stone, this woman was stunning. Long hair flowing in an imagined wind, a confident smile, one arm raised high with a staff, legs perfectly framed by an open robe. The pose radiated absolute power and beauty simultaneously. Phil told me this wasn't actually a carved statue. It was created directly through god-level earth magic by Lilith's apprentice, a man named Gray who was himself a god-level earth mage, the strongest earth mage of his era. Normal earth magic constructs fade over time, but god-level creations are permanent. Gray had apparently spent his life making statues of Lilith, whom he loved and eventually married. Only 12 god-level statues survived, each showing Lilith at different ages and in different poses, all capturing her beauty perfectly. This one was the largest. The smallest was said to be palm-sized. 2 were in the Uni Empire Museum, 2 at Mage Association headquarters, and the rest in private collections. One had appeared at an imperial auction and sold for 5 million gold coins. 5 million gold. For a statue. Either I didn't understand art, or poverty had completely broken my sense of scale. Phil told me the real reason she'd brought me here. All 12 of Gray's god-level statues supposedly contained magical inheritances from both Gray and Lilith. Anyone who resonated with a statue through spiritual power could receive the legacy. If they were fated, she wanted me to try. I released my spiritual power and carefully scanned the statue. Nothing. I wrapped it completely in spiritual power. Still nothing. It felt like ordinary stone. Phil said not to worry. In hundreds of years, nobody had ever publicly claimed to receive an inheritance. Maybe nobody ever had. I figured it was fine. I was going to specialize in lightning anyway, so Earth and whatever Lilith used might not help me much. Phil mentioned that after reaching Legendary, mages could actually specialize in multiple elements, but that was far off. I looked up at Lilith's face one last time. Suddenly her confident smile seemed to shift into something irresistibly alluring. Before I knew what I was doing, my hand was reaching past the railing toward the statue. Phil yanked me back just before I touched it, warning me about the protective magic array in the base. I snapped out of it. When I looked at her face again, it was just a normal, confident smile. The seductive pull had vanished completely. I told Phil it felt like I'd been charmed for a second. She said that was impossible. The statue had been here for centuries without anyone reporting anything like that. She figured I was just captivated by Lilith's beauty. But I was certain something had happened. I crouched down and touched the base instead. Phil said the base was safe since the association regularly opened a hidden compartment there to replace the magic core powering the protective array. The instant I sent spiritual energy into the base, everything changed. I was suddenly standing inside a room. A fancy bedroom with a heart-shaped red bed, floral pink curtains, a vanity table, a plush sofa, bookshelves. Everything you'd need for comfortable living. Except there was no door. "Welcome to our tomb," said a voice behind me. I spun around. A handsome young man was smiling at me. "Hello, Tantion Mage. I'm Gray Lorenzo." My jaw dropped. The mage god Gray, Lilith's apprentice, her husband. I bombarded him with questions. Where was I? How did I get here? How did he know I was a Tantion Mage? He called out, "Honey, come out. We have a guest." Lilith appeared beside him. She looked exactly like her statue. The same stunning figure, the same mature, captivating face. No wonder Gray had been obsessed with sculpting her. "How about it? My wife's beautiful, right?" he asked bluntly. I managed an awkward while trying not to stare too obviously at another man's wife. Lilith spoke, her voice as beautiful as the rest of her. "It's been almost 200 years since the last Tantion Mage." They explained everything. They were essentially ghosts, in a semi-dead state, existing inside this space that served as their shared tomb. They'd been here for centuries, just the two of them. I offered to help with any unfulfilled wishes. Lilith laughed and said their wish was beyond my current ability. Then Gray clarified why I was here. The fated person story was a cover. The statues were specifically designed to detect Tantion Mages. When a Tantion Mage scans the statue with spiritual power, it triggers a charm spell that draws them to touch it. Once they make contact, the spell pulls them inside. So, fate had nothing to do with fate at all. It meant Tantion, and it made sense. This was the inheritance of two mage gods. They weren't going to waste it on someone who couldn't eventually reach that level. Gray looked at me and asked, "So, would you like to take us both as your masters?" I dropped to my knees immediately. Two mage god inheritances? Only an idiot would refuse. But before my forehead hit the ground, Lilith stopped me. "Hold on. Gray's just messing with you." I froze mid-kneel, face twisted in disbelief. "You drag me into your magical tomb and offer me a divine inheritance as a joke? Have you two been alone so long you've forgotten how to interact with living people?" Gray burst out laughing at my expression. I nearly choked on my own fury. If I could beat these two, I'd have scattered them to the wind. Then I remembered. They were already dead. No ashes left to scatter. Lilith helped me up and explained. It wasn't that they didn't want to pass on their knowledge. It was that most of what they could teach had already been researched and systematized by modern magic academies. I'd learn it all in school, and more efficiently than they could teach me. But, she said, they did have something for me, just not yet. High-level magic in the four advanced branches, spiritual, soul, space, and time, hadn't progressed much beyond their era. Some had actually regressed. They'd give me their inheritance when I reached Legendary Mage. I asked how they knew so much about modern magic if they'd been dead for centuries. Gray said they weren't fully dead, just semi-dead, and they could pull any Tantion Mage into this space. The current strongest mage god, Dongfang Xiao, was apparently their student. He might become my senior. Lilith explained their situation. They were pure souls now, no bodies. She'd specialized in soul and spiritual magic alongside formations. Their research had been about achieving immortality. The problem was simple. A god-level mage's soul could last 5,000 years, but the body only survived about 600. The body dragged the soul down. Necromancers had tried solving this by separating soul from body, but the process corrupted both. The body rotted and the soul turned evil. That's why all known necromancers were twisted and malicious. It wasn't by choice. A soul without a body amplifies its darkest impulses. Lilith's approach was different. Instead of letting the soul carry spiritual power like necromancers did, She made spiritual power carry the soul. But only God-level spiritual power, nearly solid in substance, could serve as a vessel. She'd had no test subjects and had to experiment on herself at the end of her life. It half-worked. The spiritual power sustained her soul, but without a body, the spiritual power would slowly dissolve into the world. About 100 years maximum. Gray's specialty was earth and life magic. His research was about creating an artificial body that wouldn't age, what they called the eternal body. He succeeded halfway too. The body existed and could prevent spiritual power from dissipating, but he couldn't connect a soul to it. So at the end of Gray's life, they sealed both their souls inside the eternal bodies together. The 12 Lilith statues were all eternal bodies, living constructs without souls to drive them. I asked why they were all different sizes if they were meant to be replacement bodies. The smallest was supposedly palm-sized. Gray grinned proudly. To experience my wife at every age, of course. I was speechless. This man was on another level entirely. Custom build your wife's body however you wanted, age, appearance, figure, all adjustable by mood. I had to respect the dedication. Then I made the mistake of asking how exactly the palm-sized one worked. Gray started explaining. Well, every man's first girlfriend is his own left and right hand. So at that size you could. He didn't finish. Lilith's foot connected with his face and launched him across the room. Before I could react, her second kick sent me flying too. I crashed right on top of Gray. Men are all perverts. Not a single good one among you, she said furiously. I'm leaving. You handle the rest. Then she vanished. The moment Lilith disappeared, I scrambled to my feet and threw myself into a full bow before Gray. Master, from this day forward, you are my teacher. Please pass on your wife's sculpting techniques. I swear I'll find a way to connect souls to the eternal bodies and bring you both back. Gray pulled himself up and told me to focus on training first. The inheritance required at least legendary-level magic. And since I'd need to specialize in earth and life magic on top of my existing lightning path, that meant 3 specializations. Extremely difficult and time-consuming, even for a Tontian mage. He and Lilith were both Tontian and had only managed 2 each. He said I could come back through any of the 12 eternal bodies once I reached legendary. Then he pulled open the curtains. The window showed the view from the statue's eyes, looking out over the central square. Jump out. Come back when you're ready for the real apprenticeship. I jumped.